Star Wars. Outlaws. Chapter 1. The Spy Who Conned Me. The air in the secret underground base crackled with tension, thick enough to cut with a vibroblade. Vess adjusted the collar of her immaculately tailored jacket, fighting the urge to fidget as she stood before the assembled crime lords. The dimly lit chamber, all sleek durasteel and flickering holograms, screamed of wealth and danger in equal measure. Just another job, Kay reminded herself, though the mantra did little to slow her racing pulse. This wasn't some backwater spice run or petty data theft. No, she was in the big leagues now, rubbing elbows with the most notorious criminals in the galaxy. To her left lounged a Hutt, its massive slug-like body draped in gaudy jewels. Kay suppressed a shudder as its bulbous eyes roved over her, feeling every bit the insect before a toad. On the right, a statuesque Faline woman with emerald skin examined her manicured talons, radiating boredom and menace. Between them sat a pale, scarred human male, his crimson coat a bloodstain against the room's shadows. The Pike, the Hutt, and Crimson Dawn, a holy trinity of galactic scum. Well, the Crimson Dawn representative drawled, his voice like gravel in a cement mixer. "We haven't got all night, girl." Spit it out. Kay allowed herself a small smirk. Time to earn my credits. "My employers," she began, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins, "have reason to believe that one of you." She paused, sweeping her gaze across the assembled crime lords, "is planning to betray the others." The effect was instantaneous. The Hutt's booming laugh shook the room. The Faline's eyes narrowed to dangerous slits. The human's hand twitched towards the blaster at his hip. "Preposterous!" the Pike hissed, her forked tongue flicking in agitation. "Who are these employers of yours? How dare they accuse us of such treachery?" Kay raised an eyebrow, the picture of calm professionalism. "I'm afraid I can't reveal my sources. Surely you understand the delicacy of the situation." The human leaned forward, his scarred face twisting into a sneer. "Oh, we understand perfectly. You're either a fool or a liar, and I'm not sure which is worse." "I assure you," Kay said, her hand casually drifting towards her own concealed weapon, "I am neither. I'm simply a messenger here to—" The Hutt's thunderous voice cut through the tension. "Enough. This meeting was meant to solidify our alliance, not sow discord with baseless accusations." Kay allowed a flicker of doubt to cross her face. Hook, line, and sinker. Alliance? I was led to believe this gathering was to negotiate territories in the wake of the Empire's fall. The crime lords exchanged wary glances. Kay could practically see the gears turning in their heads, each wondering if they'd been double-crossed. "Perhaps," the Faline purred, her voice dangerously soft, "we should take a moment to clarify our individual positions." And just like that, the carefully orchestrated meeting devolved into chaos. Accusations flew like blaster bolts. The Hutt roared threats in Huttese while the human and Faline traded barbs laced with poison. Kay took a step back, her work done. All she had to do now was make a quiet exit, and a hand clamped down on her shoulder, iron strong. She whirled to find herself face to face with a towering Trandoshan, his reptilian eyes glinting with malice. "Going somewhere, little spy?" he hissed. "Criff!" Kay's mind raced. She hadn't counted on hired muscles smart enough to see through her ruse. Time for Plan B. In one fluid motion she ducked under the Trandoshan's arm, driving her elbow into his solar plexus. He wheezed, more in surprise than pain, but it was enough. Kay bolted for the door, her fingers flying over the keypad. "Stop her!" The human's voice cut through the din, suddenly united in purpose. The door slid open with a hiss, and Kay dove through, only to find herself face to face with a phalanx of battle droids, their photoreceptors glowing an ominous red. Well, shove it. Kay's hand shot to her belt, fingers closing around a familiar cylinder. With a flick of her wrist, the room filled with blinding light and acrid smoke. Coughing and cursing erupted behind her as she vaulted over the confused droids. Her boots pounded Duracrete as she sprinted through winding corridors, the wail of alarms joining the chorus of shouts echoing after her. Kay's lungs burned, but a fierce grin split her face. This was living. She skidded around a corner, nearly colliding with a pair of Gamorrean guards. Without breaking stride, she slid between their meaty legs, leaving them grunting in confusion. "Nix!" Kay shouted into her wrist comm. "Fire up the engines. We're leaving." A series of indignant beeps and whistles crackled through the device. "Yes, now. Unless you fancy a permanent vacation on a Hutt's pleasure barge." More annoyed binary. "Oh, don't be so dramatic." "I'll explain later. Just—" Kay's retort was cut short as a blaster bolt sizzled past her ear, close enough to singe her hair. She risked a glance back to see the Trandoshan in hot pursuit, flanked by a squad of security droids. "Whoever's shooting," she muttered. "Your aim is terrible." As if to prove her wrong, the next shot grazed her arm, sending a jolt of white-hot pain through her nerves. Kay hissed but kept running. The landing pad was just ahead. She could see her ship. An explosion rocked the facility, nearly throwing Kay off her feet. Duracrete dust rained down as cracks spider-webbed across the ceiling. "Thanks for the distraction, Nix," Kay thought grimly. "Though you could have waited until I was clear." With a final burst of speed, she reached her ship, a battered YT 2400 light freighter that had seen better decades. The loading ramp was already down, and Kay practically flew up it. "Go, go, go!" she shouted, slapping the ramp controls. The ship's engines roared to life as Kay threw herself into the pilot's seat. Her fingers danced across the controls, muscle memory taking over as they rocketed away from the disintegrating base. Only when they'd cleared the atmosphere, the sky fading from blue to star-studded black, did Kay allow herself to relax. She slumped in her seat, every muscle screaming in protest. A series of concerned beeps came from her right. Kay turned to see Nix, her faithful astromech, its optical sensor regarding her with what passed for worry in a droid. "I'm fine," Kay assured him, wincing as she probed at the blaster burn on her arm. "Nothing a little Bacta can't fix?" Nix whistled skeptically. Okay, it didn't go exactly to plan, but we got what we came for, didn't we?" Kay pulled a data chip from a hidden pocket, grinning triumphantly. "Coordinates, security codes, shipping manifests, everything we need to hit these guys where it hurts." The droid's dome swiveled, its tone disapproving. "Don't give me that," Kay said, rolling her eyes. "A girl's got to eat. Besides," she added, her voice softening, "we're one step closer to clearing my debt. One big score and we're free." Nix beeped softly, almost sad. "Yeah," Kay sighed, staring out at the stars streaking past. "I know. Freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose." She shook her head, pushing away the melancholy. There'd be time for introspection later. Right now, they had a big payday to plan. "Set a course for Tushara," Kay said, a hint of her earlier grin returning. "I hear the winds of fortune are blowing our way." As the ship jumped to hyperspace, Kay couldn't shake the feeling that she'd set something in motion far bigger than a simple con. The charged atmosphere of that meeting, the tension between the crime lords, it was like a powder keg just waiting for a spark. "Well," she thought ruefully, "I've certainly provided that. Whatever storm was brewing, Vess intended to ride it out. And maybe, just maybe, come out on top." The stars blurred into streaks of light, carrying them towards an uncertain future. But uncertainty was Kay's stock in trade. As long as she had her wits, her ship, and Nix by her side, she could handle anything the galaxy threw at her. Or so she hoped. Chapter 2. Wind and Whispers. The YT 2400 freighter shuddered as it dropped out of hyperspace, the swirling blue tunnel collapsing into pinpricks of starlight. Before them hung Toshara, a world of swirling clouds and wind-swept plains. Kaylee leaned forward in the pilot's seat, studying the planet with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. "Doesn't look like much from up here, does it?" Nix beeped a non-committal response, his sensors already scanning the planet's surface. "Well, let's hope the winds of fortune are more than just a saying," Kay muttered, guiding the ship into the planet's atmosphere. The descent was rough, buffeting winds battering the freighter from all sides. Kay's knuckles whitened as she gripped the controls, fighting to keep them level. "Whoever decided to colonize this dust ball must have been out of their mind," she gritted through clenched teeth. As they broke through the cloud cover, the true nature of Toshara revealed itself. Vast plains stretched to the horizon, dotted with rock formations worn smooth by centuries of relentless wind. Vegetation was sparse, limited to low-growing, tenacious plants that clung to the earth. In the distance, Kay could make out the faint outline of a settlement, its buildings hunched against the gale. They set down on the outskirts of the town, the landing struts groaning as they took the ship's weight. Kay double-checked the seals on her jacket and pulled on a pair of goggles. "Stay with the ship, Nix," she instructed. "Keep the engines warm. I've got a feeling we might need a quick exit." The droid whistled an affirmative, though Kay could swear there was a note of concern in its electronic voice. As soon as the ramp lowered, Kay was hit by a wall of wind that nearly knocked her off her feet. Dust and grit stung her exposed skin, and the constant howl made her ears ring. Leaning into the gale, she made her way towards the settlement. The town was a hodgepodge of prefab structures and repurposed ships, all anchored deep into the bedrock. Signs creaked on rusted chains, and wind chimes made from scrap metal sang a constant, discordant symphony. Despite the harsh conditions, Kay could see signs of life, laundry flapping defiantly on lines, the warm glow of windows, the occasional speeder zipping between buildings. Kay ducked into what appeared to be the local cantina, a converted freighter with the Eye of the Storm painted in faded letters across its hull. As the door sealed behind her, the howling wind faded to a dull roar. The cantina's interior was dim and smoky, filled with the low murmur of conversation and the clink of glasses. Kay made her way to the bar, acutely aware of the curious glances thrown her way. Newcomers, it seemed, were a rarity on Toshara. "What'll it be?" the bartender, a grizzled Deveronian, asked as Kay approached. "Information," Kay replied, sliding a credit chit across the bar. "And whatever passes for whiskey in this place." The Deveronian's eyes narrowed, but he pocketed the chit and poured a measure of amber liquid into a dusty glass. "Information's a valuable commodity round here. Might cost you more than a drink." Kay took a sip of the whiskey, suppressing a grimace at its harsh burn. "I'm looking for work, the kind that doesn't ask too many questions." A low chuckle came from her left. Kay turned to see a weather-beaten human woman, her face a roadmap of lines and scars. "Honey, you've come to the right place. This whole planet doesn't ask questions. It just blows you away if you're not careful." "I'm Kay," she introduced herself, sensing an opportunity. "And you are." "Mara," the woman replied. "Local guide, scrapper, and occasional troublemaker." She raised her glass in a mock toast. "Welcome to the ass end of the galaxy." Kay grinned, warming to Mara's blunt demeanour. "Charming place you've got here." "I especially love the constant threat of being scoured to the bone." Mara barked out a laugh. "You've got spirit, I'll give you that. But spirit alone won't keep you alive on Toshara. You need to understand the wind." "The wind?" Kay raised an eyebrow. "The wind is everything here," Mara explained, her voice taking on an almost reverent tone. It shapes the land, dictates our lives, even powers our homes. But lately—" She trailed off, glancing around the cantina warily. Kay leaned in, her interest piqued. "Lately what?" Mara sighed, suddenly looking much older. "The winds have been wrong. Storms where there shouldn't be. Calm days when we need the gusts. It's throwing everything out of whack. And I'm guessing that's bad for business." "Bad for everything," Mara corrected. "Our entire infrastructure is built around harnessing the wind. Without it, we're just another worthless rock in space." Kay's mind raced, connecting dots. This wouldn't have anything to do with the atmospheric accelerator, would it? The change in Mara was instant. She stiffened, her hand drifting towards a concealed weapon. "Where did you hear about that?" she hissed. Kay raised her hands placatingly. "Easy there. I'm just a girl with her ear to the ground, picked up some chatter about valuable tech on Toshara, thought it might be worth checking out." Mara studied her for a long moment, then seemingly came to a decision. "Finish your drink," she said, downing her own. "There's something you need to see." Intrigued, Kay followed Mara out of the cantina and into a rusted landspeeder. They tore across the plains, the wind howling around them as Mara expertly navigated the treacherous terrain. As they crested a rise, Kay's breath caught in her throat. Before them stood a massive structure, easily the size of a star destroyer. Its sleek lines and gleaming surfaces stood in stark contrast to the rugged landscape. "The atmospheric accelerator," Mara explained, her voice barely audible over the wind. "Built during the Clone Wars to terraform Toshara. Now it's the only thing keeping us alive." "It's incredible," Kay breathed, her mind already calculating its potential value. "But why show me this?" Mara's expression darkened. "Because it's not working right, and we think we know why." She pointed to a collection of structures near the base of the accelerator. Even from this distance, Kay could make out the distinctive, angular architecture of Imperial design. "The Empire." Kay frowned. "I thought they were history." "Not all of them got the memo," Mara said grimly. "A remnant force has been here for months, messing with the accelerator's systems. We think they're trying to weaponize it somehow." Kay whistled low. "A weapon that can control the weather. That's terrifying." Mara nodded. "And it's killing our planet in the process. We've been fighting back, but—" She trailed off, frustration evident in her voice. "But you're outnumbered and outgunned," Kay finished for her. "Exactly. We need help, Kay. Someone with skills, someone who can get inside that facility and shut down whatever the imps are doing." Kay leaned back, her mind whirling. This was far bigger than the simple score she'd been hoping for. Getting involved in a planetary resistance movement wasn't exactly low-profile work, but as she looked at the majestic accelerator, at the determination in Mara's eyes, at the harsh beauty of Toshara itself, Kay felt something she hadn't experienced in a long time, the desire to do something right. "I might know someone who can help," Kay said slowly, a plan already forming in her mind. "But it won't be easy. Or cheap." Mara's face lit up with hope. "Whatever it takes. Toshara is our home. We'll pay any price to save it." As they sped back towards the settlement, Kay's thoughts raced faster than the wind whipping past them. She'd come to Toshara, looking for a quick payday. Instead, she'd found a cause. "What are you getting yourself into, Vess?" she wondered. But deep down she knew the answer. For better or worse, she was about to take on the Empire. Nyx was going to have a fit. The landspeeder disappeared into a swirl of dust, leaving only the endless howl of the wind and the looming silhouette of the atmospheric accelerator on the horizon. Whatever storm was coming, it promised to be unlike anything Kay had faced before. And somewhere in the back of her mind a small voice whispered that this moment, this choice, might be the key to something far greater than mere credits or freedom. The winds of change were blowing on Toshara, and Vess was riding them straight into the heart of the tempest. Chapter 3. The Tuscan's Pearl. The twin suns of Tatooine beat down mercilessly as Kay's ship descended through the shimmering air. Heat waves distorted the vast expanse of sand dunes, creating mirages that danced on the horizon. "Remind me again why we're here instead of on Tashara," Kay grumbled, wiping sweat from her brow. Nix beeped a series of explanations, his tone decidedly smug. All right, Kay conceded. "I know we needed to lose those syndicate goons, but did it have to be the galaxy's biggest sandbox?" As they sat down on the outskirts of Mos Eisley spaceport, Kay couldn't shake the feeling that they were jumping from the frying pan into the fire. Tatooine might not have Tashara's winds, but it had dangers all its own. "Stay with the ship," Kay instructed Nix as she donned a sand-coloured cloak. "And keep the comms open. If trouble shows up," Nix interrupted with a series of indignant whistles. Kay grinned. "You're right. When trouble shows up, be ready for a quick exit." The streets of Mos Eisley were a chaotic blend of beings from across the galaxy. Jawas haggled over droid parts, Rhodians lounged in the shadows of cantinas, and the occasional stormtrooper patrol reminded everyone that even here, at the edge of the Outer Rim, the Empire's influence lingered. Kay kept her hood low, eyes scanning for potential threats or opportunities. She'd barely made it 2 blocks when the hairs on the back of her neck stood up. Someone was following her. Without breaking stride, Kay ducked into a narrow alley, her hand drifting to the blaster at her hip. She pressed herself against the sun-baked wall, waiting. Footsteps approached, slow and deliberate. A shadow fell across the alley entrance. Kay burst into action, grabbing the figure and pinning them against the opposite wall, her blaster pressed to their chest. "Why are you following me?" she hissed. To her surprise, her captive didn't struggle. Instead, a calm voice emerged from beneath wrapped layers of cloth. "I seek help, not conflict." Kay blinked, taken aback. The figure before her was unmistakably a Tuscan raider, but something about their demeanor was different. Slowly, Kay lowered her weapon. "You've got a funny way of asking for help." The Tuscan inclined their head. "I apologize for the deception. But these are dangerous times, especially for my people. I am Jalen." Kay raised an eyebrow. "A Tuscan with a name? That's unusual. As is a human who can pin a Tuscan warrior," Jalen replied, a hint of amusement in their voice. "You are not what you seem, outsider." "Likewise," Kay said, holstering her blaster but remaining wary. "What kind of help are you looking for?" Jalen glanced around, then gestured further down the alley. "Not here. There are too many ears in Mos Eisley." Curiosity overrode caution, and Kay found herself following the Tuscan through a maze of back streets and hidden passages. They emerged on the outskirts of the city where the buildings gave way to the endless desert. Jalen led Kay to a small encampment nestled among the dunes. A handful of other Tuscans moved about, tending to banthas and repairing equipment. They regarded Kay with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. "My tribe," Jalen explained, "or what's left of it." Kay frowned. "What happened to the rest?" Jalen's posture stiffened. "The same thing that always happens on Tatooine. Greed, violence, misunderstanding." They turned to face Kay fully. "Which is why I need your help. We seek to recover something precious, something that could change everything for my people." "And what might that be?" Kay asked, her interest piqued. "A dragon pearl." Kay's eyes widened. "You're kidding." "Those are worth a fortune." "Its value goes beyond credits," Jalen said sharply. "The pearl is sacred to us. It represents our connection to the desert, to the great crate dragons that once roamed freely. With it we could unite the scattered tribes, show them a path beyond endless conflict with the settlers." Kay studied the Tuscan, weighing their words. A noble goal, but why come to me? I'm just a traveller passing through. Jalen's mask tilted in what might have been amusement. "You are many things, Vess. But just a traveller is not one of them. Word travels even in the desert. We know of your skills, your creative approach to problem-solving. You've got me confused with someone else, Kay said quickly, her hand drifting back to her blaster. Peace, Jalen raised their hands. We seek your help, not your secrets. The pearl was stolen by a gang of outlaws led by a Deveronian named Tycho. They're holed up in an old Republic outpost in the Jundland wastes, heavily armed, well supplied. Kay whistled low. Sounds like a suicide mission. For a frontal assault, yes, Jalen agreed. But for someone with your particular talents. And what's in it for me? Kay asked, though she already felt herself being drawn into the Tuscans' cause. Jalen reached into their robes and produced a small, intricately carved box. Inside lay a data chip, information, old Imperial records detailing hidden caches across the outer rim. Weapons, credits, technology, enough to set you up for life. Kay's eyes gleamed. This could be the score she'd been waiting for. But something nagged at her. Why offer this? It must be valuable to your people, too. Jalen nodded solemnly. It is. But the pearl is priceless. It's our future. Kay found herself believing the Tuscan. There was a sincerity in their voice, a desperation that couldn't be faked. All right, Kay said finally. I'm in, but I'll need details. Layout of the outpost, guard rotations, the works. Relief seemed to radiate from Jalen. Of course. We have been observing them for weeks. I will share everything we know. As the suns began to set, painting the desert in shades of orange and purple, Kay and Jalen pored over crude maps and intelligence reports. The more Kay learned, the more she realized just how dangerous this heist would be. But there was something else growing alongside the apprehension, a sense of purpose. This wasn't just another job. It was a chance to make a real difference, to help a people who had been misunderstood and persecuted for generations. As night fell and the temperature plummeted, Kay found herself sitting around a small fire with Jalen and the other Tuscans. They shared a meal of hearty desert fare, and to her surprise, Kay found herself enjoying their company. Jalen's mask was off, revealing a face weathered by sun and hardship, but with eyes that sparkled with intelligence and hope. They spoke of Tuscan legends, of the great crate dragons and the secrets hidden in the desert's endless expanse. For the first time in a long while, Kay felt like she was part of something bigger than herself. It was a dangerous feeling, she knew. Attachment, cause, belief. These were luxuries a survivor in the galactic underworld couldn't afford. And yet, as she lay under the star-filled sky that night, the plans for the heist taking shape in her mind, Kay couldn't help but feel that this moment, this mission, might be the beginning of something profound. The pearl awaited, hidden in the wastes, and with it, perhaps, a new path for the Tuscans, and for Kay herself. Tomorrow would bring danger, cunning, and the thrill of the impossible, but for now, Kay allowed herself to drift off to sleep, lulled by the soft sounds of the desert night and the promise of redemption. Chapter 4. Sandstorm Heist. The pre-dawn chill clung to Kay's skin as she crouched behind a weathered boulder, surveying the old Republic outpost through macro binoculars. The structure jutted from the sand like the skeleton of some long-dead beast, its durasteel bones bleached by decades of harsh Tatooine suns. Tycho's crew has adapted it well, Jalen whispered beside her. The Tuscan's eyes, barely visible between wrappings, scanned the horizon warily. The main entrance is heavily guarded, and they've rigged the surrounding area with proximity sensors. Kay nodded, her mind already racing through possibilities. Good thing we're not using the main entrance, then. Jalen tilted their head quizzically. You have another way in. A sly grin spread across Kay's face. Oh, we're going to let the desert do the work for us. As if on cue, a low rumble echoed across the dunes. On the eastern horizon, A massive wall of sand was visible, roiling and churning as it approached. "Sandstorm," Jalen breathed, a note of awe in their voice. "But how did you know?" Kay tapped her wrist computer. "A little gift from our friends on Toshara. Atmospheric prediction algorithm. Turns out it works just as well for sand as it does for wind." The Tuscans shook their head in amazement. "Impressive, but how does this help us?" "Watch and learn," Kay winked, though the gesture was lost on her masked companion. She keyed her comlink. "Nix, you ready?" An affirmative series of beeps crackled through the device. "All right, buddy, time to kick up some dust." In the distance, Kay's ship rose from its hiding place among the rock formations. It streaked low across the dunes, kicking up a massive plume of sand in its wake. As it neared the outpost, proximity alarms began to wail. "They'll think it's just the storm interfering with their sensors," Kay explained as figures scrambled on the outpost's walls. "But it should be enough to—" Her words were cut off by a deafening explosion. One of the outpost's sensor towers erupted in a fireball, scattering debris across the sand. "Nix," Kay hissed into her comlink. "I said distraction, not demolition." The droid's response was a series of unrepentant beeps and whistles. "Well, yes, I suppose it is distracting," Kay conceded. "All right, that's our cue. Ready to do some running, Sandperson." Jalen nodded grimly. "Lead the way, outsider." The pair sprinted across the open ground using the confusion and the approaching sandstorm as cover. Kay's heart pounded in her ears, every instinct screaming that they were too exposed, too vulnerable. But years of experience had taught her that sometimes the boldest move was the safest. They reached the base of the outpost just as the first winds of the storm hit. Sand stung Kay's exposed skin, and she pulled a breath mask over her face. Jalen seemed unaffected, their traditional wrappings providing ample protection. "There," Kay pointed to a half-buried service hatch. "That's our way in." As Jalen stood watch, Kay made quick work of the rusted lock with a few deft movements of her multi-tool. The hatch creaked open, revealing a dark shaft descending into the outpost's bowels. "Ladies first," Kay grinned, gesturing to the opening. Jalen's mask somehow managed to convey exasperation. "Age before beauty," they countered, motioning for Kay to lead. Chuckling, Kay swung herself into the shaft, using her arms and legs to control her descent. Jalen followed close behind, their movements silent and graceful despite their bulky wrappings. They emerged in a dimly lit maintenance corridor. The distant sound of alarms and shouted orders filtered through the walls. "Okay," Kay whispered, consulting a schematic on her wrist computer. "According to the plans, the main vault should be 2 levels up and to the east. That's likely where they're keeping the pearl." Jalen nodded. "And Tycho. Probably holed up in the command center, coordinating the response to our little distraction. We'll deal with him if we have to, but let's hope we can get in and out clean." They made their way through the outpost, ducking into alcoves and empty rooms whenever patrols passed by. Kay was impressed by Jalen's stealth. For someone raised in the open desert, they moved through the confined space like a shadow. As they neared the vault level, the sound of approaching boots forced them into a cramped storage closet. Kay found herself pressed uncomfortably close to the Tuscan, acutely aware of their breath and the warmth of their body. "So," she whispered, trying to dispel the awkward tension, "you never did tell me how a Tuscan ended up with a name like Jalen." Even in the dim light, Kay could sense the Tuscan's hesitation. It was given to me by an outsider, a Jedi long ago." Kay's eyebrows shot up. "A Jedi? I thought they were all wiped out." "Most were," Jalen replied softly. "This one, he was different. He saw beyond our masks, beyond the fear and mistrust. He taught us that there were other ways, that we didn't have to be bound by the old hatreds." The wistfulness in Jalen's voice stirred something in Kay. "What happened to him?" "The Empire came. He protected us, gave his life so that some of us could escape. Jalen's fists clenched. That's why the pearl is so important. It's not just a relic. It's a symbol of what he taught us, of the path he showed us. Kay felt a lump form in her throat. She'd never put much stock in causes or beliefs, but the raw emotion in Jalen's voice was undeniable. "We'll get it back," she said, surprising herself with her conviction. "I promise." The moment was broken by the sound of the patrol passing. Kay pressed her ear to the door, listening intently. "Okay, coast is clear, let's move." They emerged from the closet and made their way to the vault level. The security here was heavier, with camera droids patrolling the corridors and blast doors blocking their path. "This could be tricky," Kay muttered, eyeing the defences. "We'll need a diversion too." She was cut off by a blood-curdling screech that echoed through the halls. Kay whirled to see Jalen charging towards the nearest guard, gaffy stick raised high. "Or we could just do that," Kay sighed, drawing her blaster and joining the fray. The next few minutes were a blur of action. Kay's shots found their marks with uncanny precision, while Jalen's gaffy stick wreaked havoc among the guards. They fought back to back, covering each other's blind spots with an efficiency that surprised them both. As the last guard fell, Kay couldn't help but grin. "Not bad for a sand person." Jalen's mask turned towards her, and Kay could have sworn they were smiling beneath it. "You're not so clumsy yourself for an outsider." With the immediate threat neutralized, they turned their attention to the vault door. It was a formidable piece of engineering, with multiple locking mechanisms and a cortosis weave exterior. "This might be a problem," Kay admitted, running her hand along the seamless metal. Jalen stepped forward, producing a small, intricately carved cylinder from within their robes. "Perhaps not. The Jedi. He left us more than just teachings." Kay's eyes widened as a beam of shimmering energy erupted from the cylinder. "Is that a lightsaber?" Jalen confirmed, the humming blade casting an ethereal glow across the corridor. "Stand back." With methodical precision, Jalen began to cut through the vault door. The lightsaber sliced through the reinforced metal like it was butter, leaving a molten trail in its wake. As the circular cut was completed, Kay stepped forward and gave the center a solid kick. The metal groaned and fell inward with a resounding clang. They stepped into the vault, eyes scanning the shelves and containers for their prize. Kay's breath caught as she spotted it. A sphere about the size of her fist, its surface an iridescent swirl of colours that seemed to shift and dance in the light. "The pearl!" Jalen breathed, reaching out reverently. As their fingers closed around the artifact, a slow clap echoed through the vault. Kay and Jalen spun to see a tall Deveronian leaning casually against the doorframe, a wicked-looking blaster trained on them. "Well done," Tycho sneered, his pointed teeth gleaming. "I must say I'm impressed, but I'm afraid this is where your little heist comes to an end." Kay's mind raced, calculating angles, assessing options. Her blaster was holstered, and Jalen's lightsaber was deactivated. They were cornered, outgunned. But as her eyes met Jalen's, she saw not defeat, but determination. And in that moment, Kay knew that this was more than just another job. It was a fight for something bigger than herself. With a subtle nod to Jalen, Kay tensed, ready to spring into action. The pearl might be within their grasp, but the real battle was just beginning. And Kay Vess didn't intend to lose. Chapter 5, Echoes of the Empire. Time seemed to stretch like heated plasteel as Kay stared down the barrel of Tycho's blaster. The Deveronian's sneer widened, revealing more of his pointed teeth. "I must admit," Tycho drawled, "I didn't expect a Tusken to be involved in this little caper. Teaming up with the Sand People now, eh, Vess?" Kay's mind raced, buying time. "What can I say? I'm a sucker for a good cause." Tycho barked out a laugh. "A cause? Please. We both know you're just in it for the credits. Speaking of which..." His eyes gleamed with avarice as they fixed on the pearl in Jalen's hand. Hand it over, and maybe I'll let you walk out of here. Jalen's grip on the pearl tightened. This does not belong to you, thief. Thief. Tico's face twisted in mock offense. I prefer opportunistic entrepreneur. Now are we going to do this the easy way, or— His words were cut short as the entire outpost shook violently. Dust and small debris rained down from the ceiling. Kay didn't hesitate. In one fluid motion she drew her blaster and fired. Tycho, momentarily distracted by the tremor, caught the shot in his shoulder. He roared in pain and anger, his own weapon discharging wildly as he stumbled backward. "Move!" Kay shouted, grabbing Jalen and pulling them towards the exit. They sprinted through the corridors, the sound of alarms mixing with the ongoing rumble of what Kay now realized must be an bombardment. Her comlink crackled to life, Nix's frantic beeps barely audible over the chaos. "What do you mean, Imperial ships?" Kay yelled into the device as they ran. "I thought the Empire was gone." More beeps and whistles. Okay. Just be ready for extraction. We're on our way out." They rounded a corner and came face to face with a squad of Tycho's guards. Before Kay could react, Jalen stepped forward, the lightsaber humming to life in their hands. The Tusken moved with a grace that belied their bulky wrappings, the energy blade deflecting blaster bolts and cutting through weapons with ease. Kay added her own fire to the mix, and within moments the path was clear. She stared at Jalen in amazement. "Where did you learn to do that?" "The Jedi taught me the basics," Jalen replied, a hint of sadness in their voice. "I've had many years to practice since." Another explosion rocked the outpost, closer this time. "Well, as impressive as your saber skills are, I think it's time we made our exit," Kay said, gesturing towards a nearby window. They could see Tycho's remaining forces scrambling outside, caught between the Imperial attack from above and a sudden onslaught from the desert. Kay's jaw dropped as she saw a horde of Tuskens riding banthas, their gaffy sticks raised high as they charged the outpost. "Friends of yours?" she asked Jalen. The Tusken nodded. "I may have sent a signal when we breached the vault. My people are always ready to answer the call." Kay couldn't help but grin. "Remind me never to get on your bad side." They made their way to the ground level, fighting through pockets of resistance. Kay was impressed by how well she and Jalen worked together, their movements complementing each other as if they'd been partners for years. As they burst out of the outpost's main entrance, the full scale of the chaos became apparent. Imperial TIE fighters screamed overhead, strafing the structure with laser fire. Tico's forces were in full retreat, overwhelmed by the combined assault from the air and the Tusken raiders. "There." Kay pointed to where her ship was touching down amid the swirling sand. "Let's go." They sprinted across the battlefield, ducking and weaving to avoid blaster fire from all sides. Just as they reached the ship's boarding ramp, a gravelly voice called out behind them. Vess turned to see Tico, his face contorted with rage and pain, levelling a heavy blaster at them. Time slowed as she saw his finger tighten on the trigger. Suddenly Jalen was there, lightsaber flashing. The blue blade caught the blaster bolt, sending it ricocheting into the sand. In the same motion, Jalen extended their hand, and Tycho was lifted off his feet, flying backward as if hit by an invisible fist. Kay stared at the Tusken in shock. "You're force-sensitive." "A story for another time," Jalen replied, their voice strained. "We should leave now." They didn't need to be told twice. Kay and Jalen scrambled up the boarding ramp, and within moments the ship was airborne. Nix's triumphant beeps filled the cockpit as Kay took the controls, deftly maneuvering through the aerial dogfight above the outpost. "Can you get us clear?" Jalen asked, strapping into the co-pilot's seat. Kay's hands flew over the controls, a fierce grin on her face. "Watch me." The ship dove and rolled, avoiding fire from TIE fighters and ground batteries alike. Kay's piloting skills were pushed to their limits as she wove through the chaos. finally breaking atmosphere and punching into the black of space. A Star Destroyer loomed ahead, its imposing bulk filling the view screen. "Hang on," Kay warned, pushing the engines to their max. "This might get a little bumpy." The ship shuddered as turbolaser fire streaked past them. Kay's fingers danced across the navicomputer, plotting a desperate hyperspace jump. "Are you sure about this?" Jalen asked, eyeing the rapidly approaching Star Destroyer. "Not even a little," Kay replied. She took a deep breath, then pulled the hyperdrive lever. The stars stretched into lines, and with a lurch that seemed to defy physics, they were gone. As the swirling blue of hyperspace enveloped them, Kay let out a long, shaky breath. "Well," she said, turning to Jalen, "that was." Her voice trailed off as she saw the Tuscans slumped in the co-pilot's seat, dark stains spreading across their wrappings. Jalen Kay was out of her seat in an instant, kneeling beside her companion. "Why didn't you say you were hit?" "Didn't want to distract you," Jalen managed, their voice weak. "The pearl? Is it safe?" Kay nodded, producing the artifact from a hidden compartment.
"It's right here. You did it, Jalen."
"You got it back." The Tuscan's hand reached out, trembling, to touch the pearl's iridescent surface. As their fingers made contact, the artifact began to glow with an inner light. Kay watched in amazement as the wounds visible through Jalen's torn wrappings began to close. "By the stars," she breathed. "Is it healing you?" Jalen nodded weakly. "The pearl, it is more than just a symbol. It is a conduit for the Force itself." As the glow faded, Jalen sat up straighter, their strength visibly returning. They carefully rewrapped their injuries, then turned to Kay. "You have questions," they said simply. Kay let out a short laugh. "That's putting it mildly. You're Force sensitive, you can use a lightsaber, and now this." She gestured to the pearl. "Who are you really, Jalen?" The Tuscan was quiet for a long moment. Then slowly they reached up and began to unwrap the coverings around their face. Kay held her breath, realizing she was about to see something few outsiders ever had, the face of a Tuscan raider. As the last wrapping fell away, Kay found herself staring into eyes that were unmistakably human. Jalen's face was weathered by years in the desert, but there was a wisdom and kindness in their expression that took Kay aback. "My real name," they said softly, "is Jalen Corder. I was once a Padawan of the Jedi Order, sent to Tatooine to study the Force-sensitive creatures of the desert. When Order 66 came," Jalen's voice caught, "the Tuscans took me in, protected me. I've lived as one of them ever since." Kay sat back, her mind reeling. "But the Imperial Remnant, the attack, was that because of you?" Jalen shook their head. "No, I don't think so. The Empire's interest seems to be in the pearl itself. They must have learned of its power." A chill ran down Kay's spine as the implications set in. If the Empire gets their hands on an artifact that can heal wounds and amplify Force abilities, it would be disastrous, Jalen finished grimly. The balance we've struggled so hard to achieve would be shattered. Kay ran a hand through her hair, suddenly feeling the weight of the galaxy on her shoulders. This was so far beyond the simple heist she'd signed up for. "So what now?" she asked, surprised to find herself genuinely invested in the answer. Jalen regarded her thoughtfully. "You've proven yourself a valuable ally, Vess, and a friend. Will you help us protect the pearl? Help us stop the Empire from regaining its power?" Kay looked at the glowing artifact, then back at Jalen's earnest face. She thought of Toshara, of the atmospheric accelerator and the people fighting to save their home. She thought of all the worlds that had suffered under Imperial rule and how close they were to falling back into darkness. With a rueful smile, she realized she'd already made her decision. "Well," Kay said, settling back into the pilot's seat, "I've always wanted to be on the Empire's most wanted list." "Where to next, partner?" As Jalen smiled and began to outline their plan, Kay felt a sense of purpose she hadn't experienced in years. The path ahead was dangerous, filled with Imperial remnants, criminal syndicates, and forces beyond her understanding. But for the first time in a long time, Vess wasn't running away from something. She was running towards it. Chapter 6, The Slicer's Gambit. The neon-drenched canyons of Nar Shaddaa's endless cityscape stretched out before Kay and Jalen as their ship descended through layers of smog and artificial light. Known as the Smuggler's Moon, this urban sprawl was a hive of scum and villainy that made Mos Eisley look like a resort world. "Charming place," Jalen commented dryly, peering out the view screen at the chaos below. They had rewrapped their face, once again assuming the appearance of a Tusken raider. Kay grinned as she guided the ship towards a decrepit landing pad. "Oh, you haven't seen anything yet?" Nar Shaddaa grows on you, like a particularly stubborn fungus. As they touched down, a motley crew of dock workers swarmed the ship, eyeing it hungrily for anything worth stealing. Kay stepped out first, her hand resting casually on her blaster. "Hands off, boys!" she called out, her voice carrying an edge of danger. "Unless you want to explain to Gruger the Hutt why his favourite smuggler's ship got scratched." The name drop had the desired effect. The workers backed off, muttering apologies and suddenly finding urgent business elsewhere. Jalen emerged, drawing curious and wary glances from the few remaining onlookers. "Gruger the Hutt?" they asked quietly. Kay winked, a little white lie. "But around here the mere suggestion of Hutt connections can open a lot of doors, or keep them firmly shut, depending on what you need." They made their way into the bowels of the city moon, navigating through crowded streets filled with beings from every corner of the galaxy. The air was thick with the sense of exotic foods, industrial chemicals, and the press of too many bodies in too little space. "So, this slicer," Jalen began as they ducked under a low-hanging mass of power cables, "you're sure they can help us access the Imperial networks?" Kay nodded, deftly sidestepping a puddle of something that might have been water, but probably wasn't. "If anyone can, it's the Ghost. Best slicer in the Outer Rim, maybe the whole galaxy. Getting them to agree, though, that might be the tricky part." They turned down a narrow alley, the ambient noise of the city fading to a dull roar. Kay approached a nondescript door and rapped out a complex pattern. After a moment, a small panel slid open, revealing a pair of suspicious eyes. "Password!" a gruff voice demanded. Kay leaned in close, whispering something that made the eyes widen in surprise. The panel slid shut, and for a moment Jalen thought they'd been rejected. Then, with a series of clicks and whirs, the door swung open. They stepped into a room that was a hacker's paradise. Holoscreens covered every available surface, displaying scrolling data, security camera feeds, and what looked like real-time starship tracking. In the centre of it all, bathed in the blue glow of the screens, sat a figure hunched over a complex array of computers. "Ghost," Kay called out. "Long time no see." The figure swiveled in their chair, revealing a face that was more cybernetic implant than flesh. One eye was a glowing red optic, while the other was a startling shade of green. When they spoke, their voice had a slight mechanical buzz to it. "Vess," the ghost said, their tone a mixture of amusement and wariness. "I thought I told you never to come back here after that stunt you pulled on Corellia." Kay spread her hands in a gesture of innocence. "Water under the bridge, surely. Besides, I've got a job that might pique your interest." The ghost's organic eye narrowed. "I'm listening." Over the next few minutes, Kay laid out their situation, the Dragon Pearl, the Imperial Remnant's interest in it, and their need to access heavily encrypted Imperial networks. As she spoke, the ghost's expression shifted from skepticism to intrigue to something approaching excitement. "Imperial systems, you say?" They rubbed their hands together, the joints making a soft whirring sound. "Now that's a challenge worthy of my talents. But it won't be easy or cheap." Kay grimaced. "About that. We're a bit short on credits at the moment, but we can offer you something far more valuable." The ghost leaned back, crossing their arms. "This ought to be good." Kay nodded to Jalen, who hesitantly produced the dragon pearl. The artifact's iridescent surface seemed to pulse in the dim light of the hacker's den. The ghost's eyes, both organic and mechanical, widened. "Is that?" "A genuine Force artifact," Kay confirmed, "capable of healing wounds and who knows what else. Imagine what someone with your enhancements could do with that kind of power." For a long moment, the only sound in the room was the humming of computers and the soft pulsing of the pearl. The ghost stared at the artifact, their expression unreadable. Finally they spoke. "You're either crazy or desperate to offer something like that. Probably both." They sighed, a sound that was half static. "All right, I'm in, but I get to study the pearl while we work." "Deal." Kay and Jalen exchanged glances. It was a risk, but they needed the ghost's skills. "Deal," Kay said, extending her hand. As the ghost shook it, their grip surprisingly strong, alarms suddenly blared from every screen in the room. The hackers spun back to their computers, fingers flying over keys. "We've got company," they announced grimly. "Looks like you brought some uninvited guests to my party, Vess." Kay drew her blaster, moving to cover the door. "Empire," the ghost shook their head. "Worse, Black Sun, and they're not here to sell cookies." Jalen activated their lightsaber, the blue glow joining the electronic light of the screens. "How did they find us?" "Questions later," Kay said, her voice tense. "Ghost, tell me you've got a back way out of here." The slicer grinned, revealing teeth that were definitely not standard issue. "I've got something better than that." They pressed a series of buttons, and suddenly the floor beneath them began to move. The entire room, computers and all, was descending like a massive lift. "Welcome to the Vertical Society of Nar Shaddaa," the ghost announced as they plunged deeper into the Moon City's depths, where there's always another level to sink to. As the sounds of battle erupted above them, Kay couldn't help but feel a thrill of excitement mixed with her apprehension. This was turning into far more than a simple slice job. "So," she said, checking the charge on her blaster, "I'm guessing you've got a plan." The ghost's mechanical eye glowed brighter. "Oh, I've got several. Hope you're ready for a crash course in high-stakes slicing, Vess. Because we're about to dive into the deepest, darkest corners of the Imperial network, with the Black Sun nipping at our heels." Jalen's grip tightened on their lightsaber. "May the Force be with us," they muttered. Kay couldn't help but grin. "Force, luck, or pure Pazak, I'll take whatever edge we can get. Let's do this." As the lift continued its descent into the unknown depths of Nar Shaddaa, Kay felt that familiar mix of danger and possibility that had drawn her to this life in the first place. Whatever came next, it was sure to be one hell of a ride. The ghost's fingers danced across their keyboards, screens flickering with data streams and security protocols. "All right, team," they said, a manic gleam in their eye. "Let's show the Empire and Black Sun why you don't mess with the best slicer in the galaxy." With the sound of pursuing forces growing fainter above them and the vast digital landscape of the Imperial network stretching out before them, Kay, Jalen, and their new ally prepared to dive into the electronic abyss. The real heist, the theft of secrets that could change the fate of the galaxy, was about to begin. Chapter 7, Casino Royale. The glittering spires of Canto Bight rose from the coastline like a mirage, their crystalline surfaces reflecting the light of a setting sun. Kay adjusted the collar of her tailored jacket, feeling distinctly out of place among Thessity of Dream's wealthiest patrons. "Remind me again why we couldn't just slice into the Imperial networks from Nar Shaddaa," she muttered into her concealed comlink. The ghost's digitally distorted voice crackled in her ear. "Because, my dear Vess, the data we need is stored on a closed system. No outside access. The only way in is through a direct connection to their local network." Kay sighed, watching as a group of laughing Neimoidians strolled past, their ornate robes worth more than most starships. And, of course, the Imperials would choose the gaudiest casino in the galaxy for their secret rendezvous. The Gilded Sabak is more than just a casino. Jalen's calm voice joined the conversation. From her vantage point, Kay could see the disguised Jedi mingling with the valets, their Tusken wrappings replaced by a smart uniform. It's neutral ground, a place where the remnants of the Empire can meet with crime lords and corrupt officials without arousing suspicion. Great, Kay grumbled. So, we're surrounded by imps, criminals, and the galaxy's snobbiest high rollers. Should be a delightful evening. Focus, Vess, the ghost chided. You've got a job to do. Remember the plan. Kay allowed herself a small smirk. Oh, I remember. Time to make some new friends. She sauntered into the casino proper, the sounds of laughter, clinking glasses, and the ever-present chime of gambling machines washing over her. The interior was a testament to excess. Fountains of shimmering water, holographic art installations, and enough precious metals to fund a small war. Kay made her way to the high-stakes sabacc tables, her keen eyes scanning the room for her target. It didn't take long to spot him. A portly Moon in an elaborate suit, his long fingers toying with a stack of high-denomination credit chips. Bingo, Kay whispered. I've got eyes on Oren Tok, the banking clan liaison. Good, the ghost replied. Get close, plant the bug, and let me work my magic. Kay approached the sabacc table, putting on her most dazzling smile. Is this seat taken? She asked, gesturing to the empty chair next to Tok. The Moon looked up, his thin lips curving into an appreciative smile. For you, my dear. It is now. As Kay took her seat, she felt the familiar thrill of the con settling over her. This was her element, reading people, manipulating situations, all while maintaining a facade of charm and innocence. The next hour was a delicate dance of carefully placed bets, strategic losses, and subtle flirtation. Kay played the part of the novice gambler to perfection, allowing Tok to teach her the finer points of sabacc while she steadily worked her way into his confidence. You're a natural, Tok praised as Kay won a modest hand. With a little more practice, you could be quite the formidable player. Kay ducked her head in mock embarrassment. Oh, you're too kind. I'm just lucky, I suppose. As she reached for her drink, she allowed her hand to brush against Tok's arm. The tiny bug concealed in her ring adhered to his sleeve, virtually undetectable. We're live! The ghost's voice came through her earpiece. Nicely done, Vess. I'm tapped into his personal comm channel. Now we just need to get him to access the Imperial network. Kay was about to respond when a commotion near the entrance caught her attention. A group of black-clad individuals had entered, their crisp uniforms and rigid postures screaming Imperial, even without the telltale insignias. Uh-oh, she murmured. We've got company. Looks like the imp delegation just arrived. Tok straightened in his seat, his demeanour suddenly all business. Ah, right on schedule. If you'll excuse me, my dear. Duty calls. As the Moon stood to greet the Imperial officers, Kay felt a moment of panic. They needed him to access the network, but she couldn't very well follow him into a private meeting. Ghost, she hissed. We've got a problem. Tok's about to go into a closed-door session with the imps. How are we supposed to get the data now? There was a moment of tense silence. Then the Slicer's voice came through, tight with concentration. Working on it. Just keep them in view. I might be able to piggyback on their secure comms if they're close enough. Kay casually repositioned herself, ostensibly to watch a nearby roulette game, but keeping Tok and the Imperial group in her peripheral vision. They were gathered near a discreet door, guarded by two intimidating Trandoshans. Jalen, Kay whispered. You seeing this? Affirmative, the disguised Jedi replied. I count 6 Imperial officers, plus Tok. The guards won't let anyone else through that door. Kay's mind raced, trying to come up with a plan. They needed a distraction, something big enough to suddenly, the lights in the casino flickered, and every hollow screen in the building began to display a rapid sequence of images. Imperial ship schematics, troop movements, credit transfers to known crime syndicates. Oops, the ghost's voice had a distinctly smug tone. Looks like someone sliced into the casino's main systems. What a terrible accident. Chaos erupted in the gambling hall. Patrons began shouting and pointing at the screens while security personnel scrambled to contain the situation. The Imperial officers looked around in alarm, their carefully maintained composure cracking. Kay didn't waste a second. In the confusion, she slipped through the crowd, palming a keycard from a distracted guard as she passed. Before anyone could stop her, she was through the private door and into a dimly lit corridor beyond. "I'm in," she reported, her heart racing. "But I don't know how long I've got before they realize I'm here. Head for the central computer terminal," the ghost instructed. "It should be at the end of the hall. Once you're there, I can use Tox access to tap into the Imperial network." Kay moved swiftly, her footsteps muffled by the plush carpet. She could hear raised voices behind her. Apparently, the Imperials had noticed the breach. The computer room was state-of-the-art, a sharp contrast to the ostentatious decor of the casino. Kay's fingers flew over the keys, following the ghost's rapid-fire instructions. "I'm in their system," the slicer announced after a tense minute. "Downloading now. Kay, you need to." The door burst open and Kay found herself staring down the barrels of several blaster rifles. "Well, well," a crisp Imperial voice cut through the silence. "What do we have here?" Kay slowly raised her hands, her mind working overtime to find a way out of this mess. But as she took in the cold eyes of the Imperial officers and the look of betrayal on Tok's face, she realized she might have finally pushed her luck too far. "Ghost," she subvocalized, hoping the comlink would pick it up. "Please tell me you got what we needed." The slicer's reply was lost in the sound of approaching footsteps and the ominous click of blaster safeties being disengaged. Kay Vess, master smuggler and con artist extraordinaire, was well and truly caught. But as the Imperials moved to apprehend her, a small smile played at the corners of her mouth. Because if there was one thing Kay knew, it was that in her line of work, getting caught was often just the beginning of the real fun. The question was, could she talk her way out of this one, or had her silver tongue finally lost its shine? As the lead Imperial officer stepped forward, datapad in hand, Kay took a deep breath. It was time to pull off the greatest performance of her career, with her life and the fate of the galaxy hanging in the balance. Chapter 8. Betrayal in the Clouds. Kay's mind raced as the Imperial officers closed in, their blasters trained on her with unwavering precision. The lead officer, a severe-looking woman with captain's insignia, stepped forward. "Identify yourself," she demanded, her voice as cold as space itself. Kay allowed a look of confused innocence to wash over her face. "I'm so terribly sorry," she began, her tone dripping with fabricated embarrassment. "I seem to have taken a wrong turn looking for the ladies' room. This resort is just so big, you know." The captain's eyes narrowed. "Do you expect us to believe that? You were accessing a restricted terminal." "Oh, was I?" Kay feigned surprise, glancing at the computer behind her. "I thought it was one of those information kiosks. You know, for finding the nearest cantina or spa treatments." A flicker of doubt crossed Tok's face. "Captain, perhaps we should." "Silence," the Imperial officer snapped. She turned back to Kay, her expression hardening. "You will come with us for questioning. Any resistance will be met with lethal force." Kay's mind whirred, searching for a way out. Suddenly the comlink in her ear crackled to life. "Kay," the ghost's voice came through, barely above a whisper. "I've got control of the casino's systems. On my mark, be ready to move." A surge of hope coursed through Kay. She just needed to buy a few more seconds. Now," she said, addressing the Imperial captain. "Surely we can resolve this misunderstanding without resorting to violence. I'm just a simple tourist, here too?" The lights in the room suddenly went out, plunging everyone into darkness. A moment later, the sprinkler system activated, drenching the occupants in a torrent of water. Kay didn't hesitate. In one fluid motion, she dropped to the ground, sweeping her leg out to trip the nearest officer. Shouts of confusion filled the air, punctuated by the sound of bodies colliding in the darkness. "Exit's at your 4 o'clock," the ghost's voice guided her. "I've unlocked the door." Staying low, Kay scrambled towards the exit, her wet clothes clinging to her skin. She burst through the door into a service corridor, alarms blaring all around her. "Jalen," she gasped into her comlink as she ran. "I need an extraction now. Already on it," came the calm reply. "Head for the East Terrace. I'll meet you there." Kay sprinted through the winding back passages of the casino, her heart pounding in her ears. Behind her she could hear the shouts of pursuing Imperial troops. She burst onto the terrace, the cool night air a shock after the chaos inside. In the distance, she could see the sleek form of their ship approaching, Jalen at the controls, but between her and freedom stood a line of security droids, their weapons trained on her. "Halt!" a metallic voice commanded. "You are under arrest." Kay skidded to a stop, raising her hands slowly. "Can't we talk about this? I'm sure there's been some kind of mistake." The droids advanced, their heavy footsteps echoing across the terrace. Kay backed up, feeling the railing press against her back. She was out of options, out of tricks, out of a blinding flash of blue light cut through the night. Jalen's lightsaber hummed as they leapt from the ship's open ramp, landing between Kay and the droids. With a series of impossibly fast movements, they deflected the droids' blaster fire back at them, reducing the security force to a pile of smoking scrap. "Need a lift?" Jalen asked, a hint of amusement in their voice. Kay grinned, her relief palpable. "Thought you'd never ask." They sprinted for the ship, diving inside just as a squad of stormtroopers burst onto the terrace. The ramp closed behind them as Jalen gunned the engines, sending them rocketing into the night sky. As the glittering lights of Canto Bight receded behind them, Kay slumped into the co-pilot's seat, exhaustion finally catching up with her. "Please tell me we got what we came for," she said, glancing at Jalen. The former Jedi nodded. "The Ghost confirms they were able to download a significant amount of data from the Imperial network. They're analyzing it now." Kay let out a long breath. "Good, because I don't think we'll be welcome back at the Gilded Sabacc anytime soon." As they broke atmosphere, the Ghost's voice came through the ship's comm system. "Nice work, team. I've got good news and bad news. The good news is we've uncovered evidence of extensive collaboration between Imperial remnants and major crime syndicates. And the bad news?" Kay asked, though she had a sinking feeling she knew what was coming. "The bad news," the Ghost continued, "is that one of their primary objectives seems to be taking control of the atmospheric accelerator on Toshara. They're planning to weaponize it." Jalen's grip tightened on the controls. "We need to warn the people of Toshara. They have no idea what's coming." Kay nodded grimly. "Set a course. We've got a planet to save." The journey to Toshara was tense, filled with strategic planning and worried speculation. By the time they touched down on the wind-swept plains, Kay felt like she'd aged years. They were met by a group of locals led by Mara, the weather-beaten woman Kay had befriended on her first visit. The look on Mara's face told Kay all she needed to know. Things had gotten worse. "The winds," Mara said without preamble, her voice tight with concern. "They're all wrong. The accelerator's been acting up, causing storms where there should be calm, drought where there should be rain. Our crops are failing, and people are getting sick." Kay exchanged a glance with Jalen. "We think we know why," she said. "The Empire, or what's left of it, they're trying to take control of the accelerator. Turn it into a weapon." Mara's face paled. "A weapon, but that would destroy the entire ecosystem. We've got to stop them." "That's why we're here," Jalen assured her. "We have a plan, but we'll need your help." As they made their way to the Resistance's hidden base, Kay couldn't shake a feeling of unease. Something about this felt too easy, too convenient. Her suspicions were confirmed the moment they stepped into the base's main control room. A squad of stormtroopers was waiting, their blasters trained on the shocked resistance fighters. In the center of it all stood a familiar face, Tycho, the Deveronian crime lord they'd encountered on Tatooine. "Welcome back, Vess," he sneered, his pointed teeth gleaming in the harsh light. "I believe you have something that belongs to me." Kay's hand instinctively went to the hidden compartment where she kept the dragon pearl. "Tycho," she said, fighting to keep her voice steady. "How did you—" "Oh, I had a little help," Tycho interrupted, gesturing to his side. From the shadows stepped Mara, her expression a mixture of shame and defiance. "I'm sorry, Kay," she said softly. "They threatened my family. I had no choice." The realization hit Kay like a punch to the gut. They'd walked right into a trap, led there by someone she'd trusted. As Tycho's men moved to disarm them, Kay's mind raced, searching for a way out. But surrounded by enemies, betrayed by an ally, and with the fate of an entire planet hanging in the balance, she was out of options. The storm clouds gathering outside seemed to mirror the darkness closing in around them. Kay Vess, who had always prided herself on being one step ahead, found herself caught in a tempest of betrayal, with no clear path to safety. As Tycho approached, his hand outstretched for the pearl, Kay made a silent vow. Somehow, someway, she would find a way to turn this around. The people of Toshara were counting on her, and Kay Vess didn't intend to let them down. Chapter 9. The Syndicate War Ignites. The cold bite of stun cuffs against her wrists was a sensation Kay Vess had hoped never to feel again. Yet here she was, bound and kneeling on the rough floor of Toshara's resistance base, now overrun by Tycho's men and Imperial stormtroopers. Beside her, Jalen sat in meditative silence, their Tuscan wrappings concealing any emotion they might be feeling. Tycho paced before them, the dragon pearl gleaming in his clawed hand. "I must admit, Vess, you've led me on quite the chase. But now, thanks to your friend Mara here, it all ends." Kay's eyes flickered to Mara, who stood off to the side, her face a mask of guilt and fear. "Why, Mara?" Kay asked, her voice hoarse. "We came here to help." "I'm sorry, Kay," Mara replied, her words barely above a whisper. "They have my children. I had no choice." Tycho's laugh was cruel and sharp. "There's always a choice, my dear. Mara here simply made the smart one." He turned his attention back to Kay. "Now, let's discuss the information you stole from Canto Bight. Where is it?" Kay managed a defiant smirk. "Sorry, pal. That data's long gone, distributed across the galaxy by now. You're too late."
The Deveronian's eyes narrowed dangerously.
"Is that so? Well, then I suppose you've outlived your usefulness." He raised his blaster, aiming it squarely at Kay's forehead. Kay tensed, preparing for the worst, when suddenly the room's comm system crackled to life. "Incoming transmission," a stormtrooper announced. It's for you, sir." "All channels." Tycho frowned, lowering his weapon. "Put it through." The holoprojector in the center of the room flickered to life, revealing the imposing figure of a Faline male. His green scales gleamed in the blue light of the hologram, and his eyes held a cold, calculating intelligence. Kay felt a chill run down her spine. She recognized him from intelligence briefings and whispered rumors in cantinas across the outer rim. Zerek Bash, one of the most powerful and ruthless crime lords in the galaxy. "Tycho, my slippery friend!" Bash's voice was smooth as silk, but with an undercurrent of barely contained rage. "I see you've been busy." Tycho straightened, clearly caught off guard. "Lord Bash, I can explain. The pearl, the accelerator, it's all part of our agreement. I was just about to contact you and—" "Spare me your excuses," Bash cut him off. "Did you really think you could double-cross me and get away with it? That I wouldn't find out about your little side deal with the Imperial remnant?" Kay's eyes widened. So that was the game Tycho was playing, trying to play both sides against the middle. Bash continued, his voice growing colder with each word. "The data stolen from Canto Bight has been quite..." Illuminating. It seems everyone's been keeping secrets. The Pikes, Crimson Dawn, even that bloated slug Gracchus. And now, thanks to your bungling, the entire underworld is in upheaval. Tycho paled visibly. My lord, please, I can fix this. Just give me a chance to. You've had your chances, Tycho. Now you'll face the consequences. Bash's eyes swept the room, finally landing on Kay. As for you, Kay Vess, you've caused quite a stir. I must admit, I'm impressed. It's not often someone manages to destabilize the entire galactic underworld in one fell swoop. Kay managed a weak grin. What can I say? I'm an overachiever. The corner of Bash's mouth twitched in what might have been amusement. Indeed. Well, Miss Vess, it seems you've inadvertently started a war. Syndicates are turning on each other, old alliances are crumbling, and new powers are rising from the ashes. Chaos reigns, and chaos, as they say, is a ladder. What do you want? Kay asked, sensing that Bash hadn't called just to gloat. What I want, Miss Vess, is to offer you a job. Your skills, your connections, they could be quite useful in the coming storm. Join me, and I'll ensure you're on the winning side of this syndicate war. Kay blinked in surprise. This was not how she had expected this conversation to go. And if I refuse? Bash's smile was predatory. Then I place a bounty on your head so large that every hunter from here to the core will be gunning for you. The choice, as they say, is yours. Before Kay could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the base. A stormtrooper burst into the room, his white armor scuffed and smoking. "We're under attack!" he shouted. Multiple ships approaching fast. There, his words were cut off by an explosion that rocked the entire facility. Through the viewport, Kay could see a fleet of ships descending from the clouds, their hulls bearing the marks of various crime syndicates. Chaos erupted in the control room. Tycho barked orders to his men, while the stormtroopers scrambled to defensive positions. In the confusion, Kay felt a familiar presence at her back. "Ready!" Jalen whispered, and suddenly Kay's stun cuffs fell away, the lock picked by an unseen force. Kay grinned, rubbing her wrists, born ready. As blaster fire erupted outside, Kay and Jalen sprang into action. Jalen's lightsaber hummed to life, deflecting shots and cutting down enemies with graceful precision. Kay dove for cover, coming up with a fallen stormtrooper's blaster in hand. "Mara!" Kay shouted over the din of battle. "Get your people to safety. We'll hold them off." Mara hesitated for a moment, then nodded, gathering the remaining resistance fighters and ushering them towards a hidden exit. Through it all, Zerek Bash's hologram watched impassively. "Well, Miss Vess," he called out, "what's your answer?" Kay fired off a series of shots, downing 2 of Tycho's men before turning back to the crime lord's image. "Thanks for the offer, but I think I'll take my chances with chaos." Bash's expression hardened. "So be it. May the best criminal win." As the hologram flickered out, Kay caught sight of Tycho slipping away, the dragon pearl still clutched in his hand. She started after him, but a fresh wave of attackers poured through the breach in the base's defences. Kay Jalen called out, deflecting a barrage of blaster bolts. "We need to get to the accelerator. If it falls into the wrong hands..." I know, Kay growled in frustration, "but first we need to get out of here alive." They fought their way through the corridors, the sounds of battle echoing all around them. Outside, ships jeweled into Shara's turbulent skies, their energy weapons cutting through storm clouds and creating bizarre light shows. As they reached the hangar bay, Kay's comlink crackled to life. "Kay!" The ghost's voice came through, tinged with static. "Please tell me you're not in the middle of all this." "Wish I could, pal," Kay replied, diving behind a crate as explosive rounds tore through the air above her. "Think you can give us a lift?" "Already on my way," the slicer responded. "But you should know, this thing's gone global. Every major syndicate is making their move. The Hutts are pushing into Pike territory. Crimson Dawn's fleet is engaging Black Sun forces over Ord Mantell, and that's just the start. Kay felt a weight settle in her stomach. She had known her actions would have consequences, but this was beyond anything she had imagined. "Kay!" Jalen's shout snapped her back to the present. "Our ride's here!" Sure enough, their ship was descending into the hangar, its ramp already lowering. They sprinted towards it, covering each other as they went. Just as they reached the ramp, a massive explosion rocked the entire base. Kay turned to see the atmospheric accelerator in the distance, now wreathed in flames and crackling energy. "No," she breathed, the full weight of their failure hitting her. As the ship lifted off, carrying them away from the chaos below, Kay stared out at the destruction spreading across Toshara. The planet's delicate atmospheric balance, already strained, was now spiraling towards collapse. And beyond, in the vast expanse of the galaxy, an even greater storm was brewing. A war that would reshape the criminal underworld, with Vess caught right in the middle of it all. "Where to?" the ghost asked as they broke atmosphere, dodging debris and weapons fire. Kay exchanged a glance with Jalen, seeing her own determination mirrored in the Jedi's eyes. "We need allies," she said firmly, "and I think I know just where to start." As their ship jumped to hyperspace, leaving the burning world of Toshara behind, Kay felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. She had started this war, however unintentionally. Now she would have to find a way to end it. Chapter 10. Ghosts of the Separatists. The ship emerged from hyperspace with a shudder, the swirling blue tunnel collapsing into pinpricks of starlight. Before them loomed a planet shrouded in perpetual twilight, its surface a patchwork of deep forests and murky swamps. "Agamar," Kay said, leaning forward in the pilot's seat. "Can't say it was on my list of vacation spots." Jalen, standing behind her, nodded grimly. "The Clone Wars left deep scars here. The Separatist presence was significant." As they began their descent, the ghost's voice crackled through the comm system. "All right, team. According to the data we extracted from Canto Bight, there should be an abandoned Separatist research facility on the planet's northern hemisphere. If the intel is correct, it might hold information about the origin strand." Kay guided the ship through the planet's thick atmosphere, rain pelting the view screen. "And you're sure this isn't a wild bantha chase? We're not exactly swimming in time here, with the whole galaxy going to hell." "It's our best lead," Jalen replied softly. "The Force, it's pulling us here. I can feel it." Kay raised an eyebrow but said nothing. She'd seen enough in the past few weeks to know better than to discount Jalen's Force-given hunches. They sat down in a clearing near the coordinates provided by the ghost. As the boarding ramp lowered, they were hit by a wave of humid air, thick with the sense of decay and stagnant water. "Charming," Kay muttered, checking the charge on her blaster. "Nix, stay with the ship. Be ready for a quick exit if things go sideways." The droid beeped an affirmative, its dome swiveling to scan the surroundings. Kay, Jalen, and the ghost, present via a portable holoprojector Kay carried, made their way through the dense undergrowth. The forest was eerily silent, save for the occasional distant cry of some unseen creature. After what felt like hours of slogging through the muck, they emerged into a larger clearing. Before them stood the ruins of a massive structure, its angular architecture a stark contrast to the organic shapes of the surrounding forest. "Separatist design, all right," Jalen confirmed, their hand resting on the hilt of their lightsaber. "Be on your guard." These facilities often had leftover security measures. They approached cautiously, Kay's eyes darting from shadow to shadow, half expecting battle droids to emerge at any moment. The main entrance was sealed, thick blast doors fused shut by time and elements. "There," the ghost's hologram pointed. "A service entrance to the right. Looks less secure." Kay made quick work of the rusted lock and they slipped inside. The interior was dark and musty, the air heavy with the weight of abandoned secrets. "Power's long dead," Kay noted, activating a glow rod. The pale light revealed corridors lined with deactivated computer terminals and empty weapon racks. As they delved deeper into the facility, Kay couldn't shake a growing sense of unease. Is it just me, or does this place feel wrong? Jalen nodded, their posture tense. The dark side of the Force is strong here. Whatever they were researching, it wasn't meant for the good of the galaxy. They reached what appeared to be the main research lab, a cavernous room filled with strange machinery and dust-covered workstations. At the center stood a familiar sight, a holoprojector, not unlike the one they used to communicate with the ghost. "Think you can get it working?" Kay asked, gesturing to the device. The ghost's hologram flickered with excitement. "Oh, I've been waiting for this. Plug me in, Vess. Let's see what secrets this place is hiding." Kay connected the portable projector to the ancient system. For a moment nothing happened. Then, with a whine of protesting servos, the facility's backup power stuttered to life. Lights flickered weakly, and the holoprojector hummed as it activated. A grainy, blue-tinged image materialized above the projector. It showed a robed figure, their face hidden in shadow. When they spoke, their voice was distorted, but the excitement in their tone was unmistakable. "Log entry 127, the figure began. "Our experiments with the artifact continue to yield fascinating results. Its ability to manipulate the very fabric of space-time is beyond anything we've encountered. If we can harness its power, victory for the separatist cause is all but assured." The image shifted, showing what was unmistakably the origin strand, pulsing with an otherworldly light. "The strand's origins remain a mystery," the scientist continued. "Legends speak of it being a fragment of the world between worlds, a realm outside of time and space. Others claim it to be a weapon forged by ancient Force wielders, neither Jedi nor Sith. Whatever its true nature, its potential is limitless." Kay and Jalen exchanged worried glances. "A weapon that can manipulate space and time." Kay whispered, "In the hands of the Empire or any of the syndicates. It would be catastrophic," Jalen finished grimly. The hologram continued, showing various experiments conducted on the strand. Kay watched in horrified fascination as test subjects were aged to dust in seconds or reverted to infancy. Wounds healed instantly, and in one particularly disturbing sequence, a volunteer was erased from existence entirely, only to reappear moments later with no memory of the event. "We're close to a breakthrough," the scientist's voice had grown more frenzied with each log entry. "Just a few more tests and we'll be able to." The recording cut off abruptly, replaced by the harsh wail of alarms. The scientist's panicked voice came through once more. "They're here. How did they find us? Quickly, secure the artifact. We can't let it fall into Republic hands." The hologram flickered and died, leaving them in stunned silence. "Well," Kay said after a moment, "that was terrifying." Jalen's hand tightened on their lightsaber hilt. "Now we know why the Force led us here. The strand is far more dangerous than we realized. We cannot allow it to be used as a weapon." The ghost's hologram flickered with nervous energy. Guys, not to add to the creepy factor, but I'm picking up some strange energy readings. Something in this facility is powering up, and it's not the backup generators." As if on cue, a low hum began to reverberate through the room. Dust shook from long-dormant consoles, and the air seemed to crackle with static electricity. "Kay," Jalen's voice was tight with urgency, "we need to leave, now." They turned to run, only to find their path blocked by a squad of battle droids, their photoreceptors glowing an ominous red. "Intruder alert!" the lead droid's mechanical voice echoed through the lab. "Engaging termination protocols." Kay dove for cover as blaster fire erupted around them. "I thought you said this place was abandoned." Jalen's lightsaber sprang to life, deflecting bolts with practiced ease. It was. These must be some kind of automated security system. As they fought their way through the reactivated droids, Kay couldn't shake the feeling that they'd stumbled onto something far bigger than they'd anticipated. The Origin Strand was not just a powerful artifact, it was a potential galaxy-ending weapon. And somewhere out there, Tycho and the Imperial Remnant were trying to unlock its secrets. They burst out of the facility, the sounds of battle fading behind them as the ancient security systems reached the limit of their operational range. As they sprinted back to the ship, Kay's mind raced with the implications of what they'd discovered. "We need to warn someone," she panted as they reached the clearing. "The New Republic, the Jedi, if there are any left, anyone who can help stop this thing from falling into the wrong hands." Jalen nodded grimly as they boarded the ship. "Agreed, but we must be cautious. Knowledge of the Strand's true power could be just as dangerous in the wrong hands." As Nix fired up the engines and they lifted off from Agamar's murky surface, Kay felt the weight of their discovery settling on her shoulders. What had started as a simple heist had become a race to save the galaxy from a threat it didn't even know existed. And somewhere out there, in the vast expanse of space, Kay knew that Zerek Bash, Tycho, and countless other players were moving their pieces on this deadly board. The game had changed, the stakes raised to unimaginable heights. As they broke atmosphere, leaving the ghosts of the Separatists behind, Vess steeled herself for the challenges ahead. She'd started this, now she had to see it through. The fate of the galaxy might just depend on it. Chapter 11, The Rogues Gallery. The neon-drenched streets of Nar Shaddah's undercity blurred past as Kay guided their speeder through narrow alleyways and bustling bazaars. Beside her, Jalen clung to the passenger seat, their Tuscan wrappings replaced by more inconspicuous attire. "Remind me again why we're here," Jalen shouted over the wind and the constant cacophony of the smuggler's moon. Kay grinned, swerving to avoid a lumbering Huttese palanquin. "Because, my Force-sensitive friend, if we want to beat Tycho and Bash at their own game, we need inside information. And there's no better place for that than the Rogues Gallery." Their destination loomed ahead, a towering structure of gleaming durasteel and shimmering force fields. Unlike the gaudy casinos and seedy cantinas that dominated much of Nar Shaddah's skyline, the Rogues Gallery exuded an air of refined danger. As they approached, Kay activated her comlink. "Ghost, you reading me?" "Loud and clear, Vess," came the reply. "I've sliced into their security feeds. You're clear for approach." Kay nodded, guiding the speeder to a nondescript landing pad. As they disembarked, she turned to Jalen. "Remember, in there, you're not a Jedi or a Tuscan. You're Zal Talon, notorious smuggler from the Outer Rim." Jalen adjusted their jacket, looking uncomfortable in the unfamiliar garb. "And you're sure this disguise will work?" "Trust me," Kay winked. "Half of going undercover is attitude. Just follow my lead." They approached the gallery's main entrance, where a pair of Gamorrean guards stood watch. Kay strode up confidently, flashing a crooked grin. "Evening, gentlemen. Kay Vess and Zal Talon here for the private tour." The guards exchanged glances, then one grunted and activated a handheld scanner. Kay held her breath as the device passed over them, praying the ghost's electronic forgeries would hold up. After a tense moment, the scanner beeped affirmatively. The guard nodded and stepped aside, allowing them entry. As the doors slid shut behind them, Kay let out a low whistle. The interior of the Rogues Gallery was a masterpiece of criminal opulence. Display cases filled with priceless artifacts lined the walls, while holographic recreations of famous heists played out above their heads. "Welcome to the Rogues Gallery," a smooth voice purred. They turned to see a Twi'lek woman approaching, her elegantly tattooed leku draped over shoulders, clad in an expensive suit. "I am Madame Shora, curator of this fine establishment. You must be our very important person guests." Kay bowed with a flourish. "The one and only. This here's my associate, Zal. We've heard so much about your collection, we just had to see it for ourselves." Sora's eyes glittered with a mix of suspicion and intrigue. "Indeed. Well, allow me to give you the grand tour." I'm sure you'll find our exhibits illuminating." As they followed Zora deeper into the gallery, Kay's eyes darted from display to display, cataloguing potential points of interest. There were artifacts from every era of galactic history: ancient Sith holocrons, Clone Wars-era weapons, even a carbonite-frozen bounty hunter from the days of the Old Republic. "And here," Zora said, gesturing to a prominent display, "is our newest acquisition, the fabled Dragon Pearl of Tatooine." Kay's heart skipped a beat. There, floating in a shimmering force field, was the very artifact they'd fought so hard to protect on Tatooine. "Magnificent," she breathed, feigning awe while her mind raced. How had it ended up here? Zora smiled, clearly pleased by their reaction. "It is, isn't it? We acquired it just recently from a rather desperate Deveronian. He seemed quite eager to part with it." Jalen tensed beside her, but Kay maintained her cool. "Fascinating. I don't suppose this Deveronian mentioned where he got it." Now, Zora chided playfully. "You know we don't reveal our sources. That would be bad for business." As the tour continued, Kay's comlink vibrated softly. She fell back a few steps, pretending to examine a display while answering. "Talk to me, ghost." The Slicer's voice came through, tense with excitement. "Kay, I found something. There's a hidden vault, 2 levels down. Whatever's in there, it's got more security than the rest of the gallery combined." Kay's pulse quickened. "That's got to be where they're keeping the real treasures. Any idea how to get in?" "Working on it," Ghost replied. "But you'll need a direct connection to their main computer. There's a terminal in the curator's office. Think you can get in there?" Kay glanced at Zora, who was explaining the finer points of Hutt cuisine to a politely bewildered Jalen. "Leave it to me." She sauntered back to the group, slipping seamlessly into the conversation. "Madame Zora, I hate to interrupt, but I was wondering if I might use your facilities." "All this excitement, you know." Zora nodded graciously. "Of course. Zal, why don't you accompany your associate? My office is just down the hall, the refresher is adjacent. I'll wait here and prepare the next part of our tour." As they walked away, Jalen leaned in close. "What are you planning?" Kay grinned. "A little sleight of hand, my friend. Just keep watch and be ready to move." They reached Zora's office, a sumptuous room with a view overlooking Nar Shaddaa's glittering expanse. Kay made a show of entering the refresher, then slipped back out, making a beeline for the computer terminal. Her fingers flew over the keys as she inserted a data spike provided by the ghost. "All right, buddy," she muttered. "Do your thing." For several tense moments, strings of code flashed across the screen. Then, with a soft chime, the system granted them access. "I'm in," Ghost's voice came through triumphantly. "Downloading the vault schematics now." "Kay, you're not going to believe this. The vault contains artifacts related to something called Project Fracture. It looks like it's tied to the origin strand somehow." Kay's eyes widened. "That's got to be what Tico and the imps are after. Can you get us in?" "Negative," Ghost replied, frustration evident in their tone. "The vault's completely isolated. You'll need to physically bypass the security." Kay bit her lip, weighing their options. A full-blown heist wasn't part of the plan, but with information on the origin strand at stake. Her decision was made for her as alarms suddenly blared throughout the gallery. Jalen burst into the office, lightsaber in hand. "We've been made," they said grimly. "Zora figured out we're not who we say we are." Kay swore under her breath. So much for the subtle approach. "Ghost, we need an exit strategy now." As the sounds of approaching guards echoed down the hallway, Kay's mind raced. They'd come here for information, but now they had a shot at something much bigger. If they could get into that vault, they might find the key to stopping Tycho and the Imperial Remnant. But with the entire gallery on high alert and their cover blown, pulling off a heist of this magnitude seemed impossible. Then again, Vess had always thrived on impossible odds. She turned to Jalen, a reckless grin spreading across her face. "How do you feel about making a withdrawal from the Rogues Gallery?" Jalen ignited their lightsaber, its blue glow casting eerie shadows across the office. "I thought you'd never ask." As the door burst open and security forces poured in, Kay and Jalen sprang into action. What had started as a simple reconnaissance mission had just become the heist of the century, and somewhere in the depths of the rogues' gallery, secrets that could change the fate of the galaxy waited to be uncovered. The real challenge was just beginning. Chapter 12, Imperial Entanglements. Alarms blared through the rogues' gallery as Kay and Jalen fought their way through waves of security droids and guards. The elegant exhibits that had awed them earlier now became a chaotic battlefield, priceless artifacts shattering as blaster bolts flew wild. "Remind me," Jalen shouted over the din, their lightsaber a blur of blue energy as it deflected incoming fire. "Was this part of your plan?" Kay ducked behind a display case, squeezing off a few shots that dropped two approaching guards. "I'm more of an improviser," she grinned, the thrill of the heist singing in her veins. "Ghost, talk to me. How do we get to that vault?" The slicer's voice crackled through her comlink, strained with the effort of remote hacking. "Working on it, Vess. The security protocols are unlike anything I've seen. It's going to take time." "Time is the one thing we don't have," Kay muttered, assessing their options. They were pinned down in the main exhibition hall, with reinforcements surely on the way. Then her eyes fell on a nearby display, a set of ancient Mandalorian vambraces. "Jalen, cover me!" Without waiting for a response, Kay darted from cover, snatching the vambraces and slipping them on. As a fresh wave of guards burst into the hall, she raised her arm and fired. A whipcord shot out, wrapping around a massive chandelier overhead. With a sharp tug, the fixture came crashing down, scattering their attackers. "Nice toy," Jalen commented, joining her as they made a break for the turbolifts. "Sometimes the old ways are best," Kay replied with a wink. "Ghost, we're headed down. Please tell me you've got that vault open." "Not yet," came the frustrated reply. "But I've got control of the lift. Get in, I'll take you to the sublevel." They piled into the turbolift, the doors sealing shut, just as blaster fire peppered the spot they'd vacated. As they descended, Kay took a moment to catch her breath, adrenaline still coursing through her system. "You know," she said, glancing at Jalen, "for a former Jedi, you seem to be enjoying this a little too much." Jalen deactivated their lightsaber, a hint of a smile visible beneath their wrappings. "The Force works in mysterious ways. Sometimes it guides us down unexpected paths." The lift shuddered to a halt, and the doors slid open to reveal a stark, utilitarian corridor, a sharp contrast to the opulence above. "End of the line, kids," Ghost's voice came through. "The vault's at the end of the hall. I've looped the camera feeds, but you've got about 3 minutes before they realize something's wrong." Kay and Jalen sprinted down the corridor, skidding to a halt before a massive Durasteel door. A complex locking mechanism glowed with an ominous red light. "Ghost, we're here. Work your magic." For several tense seconds, nothing happened. Then, with a series of clicks and whirs, the lock disengaged. The vault door swung open with a hiss of escaping air. Inside, bathed in the soft blue glow of containment fields, lay a treasure trove of artifacts and data storage devices. But it was the central pedestal that drew their attention, a small, unassuming cube that pulsed with an otherworldly energy. "Is that?" Jalen breathed. "A Sith holocron," Kay confirmed, her voice hushed with awe. "Ghost, are you seeing this?" "Crystal clear," the slicer replied. "But we've got company incoming. Whatever you're going to do it fast." Kay approached the holocron, her hand hovering over the containment field. "Any idea how to open one of these things?" Jalen stepped forward, their expression grim. "They're typically attuned to dark side energy, but perhaps." They closed their eyes, extending a hand towards the holocron. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a flicker of crimson light, the cube began to unfold, projecting a holographic image. A hooded figure materialized, its features obscured, but its voice dripping with malice. Project Fracture proceeds as planned. The Origin Strand's power grows with each passing day. Soon, we will have the ability to reshape reality itself. The Empire will rise again, stronger than ever. Kay's blood ran cold. They're going to use the Strand to change history, to undo the Empire's defeat. Jalen nodded grimly, and potentially erase everyone who ever opposed them from existence. The holocron continued, detailing coordinates and security protocols for a hidden Imperial facility. Kay quickly downloaded the information to a data chip, her mind racing with the implications of what they'd discovered. Suddenly the vault door slammed shut behind them. Kay whirled to see Madame Jora standing there, a squad of elite security droids at her back. "I must admit," Zora said, her earlier charm replaced by cold fury, "I'm impressed you made it this far." "Bah! Your little heist ends here." Kay raised her hands slowly, mind working furiously to find a way out. "Zora, you don't understand. What's in this vault? It's bigger than all of us. The entire galaxy is at stake." Zora's laugh was bitter. "Oh, I understand perfectly. Why do you think we've been collecting these artifacts? The Rogues Gallery isn't just a museum, my dear. It's a front for something far greater." As if on cue, the air shimmered behind Zora, and a new figure stepped into view. Tall, imposing, clad in the crisp uniform of an Imperial officer. "Well done, Madame Zora," the newcomer said, his cultured core accent dripping with disdain. "It seems our trap has yielded quite the catch." Kay's eyes narrowed. "And you are?" The officer smiled coldly. "Moff Cyrus Gideon, at your service. And you, Kay Vess, have become quite the thorn in our side." Jalen tensed beside her, ready to ignite their lightsaber, but Kay placed a restraining hand on their arm. They were outgunned and cornered. This required a different approach. "Moff Gideon," Kay said, allowing a hint of respect to colour her tone, "I think we may have gotten off on the wrong foot. What say we discuss this like civilized beings?" Gideon raised an eyebrow. "Oh, and what could you possibly offer that would interest the Empire?" Kay grinned, holding up the data chip. "How about the key to making Project Fracture a reality?" For a long moment, silence reigned in the vault. Then Gideon laughed, a sound utterly devoid of humour. "My dear Miss Vess, you continue to surprise. Very well, let us negotiate." As Kay was led away, flanked by stormtroopers, her mind raced. She'd bought them time, but at what cost? She'd just handed crucial information to the very people they were trying to stop. But as she caught Jalen's eye, she saw understanding there. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. The game had changed, the stakes raised to unimaginable heights. Kay Vess, master thief and reluctant hero, now found herself caught between warring criminal syndicates and the remnants of the Galactic Empire. As they were escorted to Gideon's ship, Kay couldn't help but feel a twinge of excitement beneath her apprehension. She'd always thrived in impossible situations. And they didn't get much more impossible than this. The Rogues Gallery faded into the distance as they lifted off, leaving Nar Shaddaa behind. But the real heist, the theft of the galaxy's future, was just beginning. Kay Vess had a plan. And force help anyone who got in her way. Chapter 13, Rebel Rendezvous. The sleek lines of Moff Gideon's Star Destroyer cut through the void of space, a grim reminder of Imperial might. In the officers' quarters assigned her, Kay Vess paced like a caged Nexu, her mind racing with plans and counterplans. A soft chime announced a visitor. The door slid open to reveal Jalen, still in their smuggler's disguise but with an air of barely contained tension. "We need to talk," Jalen said quietly, glancing down the corridor before entering. Kay nodded, activating a small scrambler device to block any listening devices. "What's our status?" "Not good," Jalen replied, sinking into a chair. "Gideon's scientists are making progress with the data you gave them. If they crack the full potential of the Origin Strand, then it's game over," Kay finished grimly. "The Empire rewrites history, and everything we fought for goes up in smoke." Jalen leaned forward, their voice dropping to a whisper. "There's more. I've managed to make contact with. Old friends. The New Republic knows about Project Fracture. They're mobilizing as we speak. Kay's eyebrows shot up. The New Republic, how did they? She stopped short, realization dawning. The ghost. They got a message out before we left Nar Shaddaa. A slight nod confirmed her suspicion. A New Republic operative wants to meet. They're offering us a way out, Kay. A chance to do the right thing. Kay snorted. The right thing stopped being clear a long time ago, my friend. She ran a hand through her hair, frustration evident in every movement. We're in too deep. If we run now, Gideon will know something's up. We need to see this through, find a way to sabotage Project Fracture from the inside. Jalen stood, placing a hand on Kay's shoulder. I understand, but promise me you'll at least hear them out. We could use allies in this fight. Before Kay could respond, her comlink buzzed. Moff Gideon's cultured tones filled the room. Miss Vess, your presence is required on the bridge. It seems we have. Unexpected company. Kay and Jalen exchanged worried glances. On my way, Kay replied, deactivating the scrambler. To Jalen, she whispered, whatever happens, be ready to move. The bridge of the Star Destroyer was a hive of activity as Kay arrived. Through the view screen, she could see a small fleet of New Republic ships holding position just outside of weapons range. Moff Gideon stood at the center of it all, his posture rigid with barely contained anger. Ah, Ms. Vess, perhaps you can shed some light on this situation. It seems our New Republic friends are quite insistent on speaking with you. Kay's mind raced, searching for an angle. Well, Moff Gideon, I did mention I had contacts throughout the galaxy. Perhaps we can use this to our advantage. Gideon's eyes narrowed, but a small smile played at the corners of his mouth. Indeed. Very well, Ms. Vess. Let's see how silver that tongue of yours truly is.
A hologram flickered to life on the bridge, revealing the stern face of a New Republic admiral.
This is Admiral Akbar of the New Republic fleet. We demand the immediate surrender of Kay Vess and all information pertaining to Project Fracture. Kay stepped forward, her trademark smirk firmly in place. Admiral Akbar, it's an honor. I've heard so much about your fishy exploits. The Mon Calamari's eyes swiveled in annoyance. This is no time for games, Vess. You're consorting with Imperial war criminals. Come with us now, and we can offer you protection, a clean slate. Kay could feel Gideon's eyes boring into her back. She had to play this carefully. A tempting offer, Admiral, but I'm afraid you've misunderstood the situation. I'm not a prisoner here. I'm a consultant, helping to ensure galactic stability in these chaotic times. Akbar's hologram rippled with static as he leaned forward. You can't seriously believe. What I believe, Kay interrupted smoothly, is that the galaxy is changing. Old lines are blurring. Perhaps it's time for new alliances. The bridge fell silent, tension thick in the air. Kay could practically hear the gears turning in both Gideon and Akbar's minds, each trying to decipher her true intentions. Finally, Akbar spoke. We will not fire on a civilian vessel, but make no mistake, Vess, this isn't over. Whatever game you're playing, the New Republic will not stand idly by while the Empire threatens the peace we fought so hard to achieve. As the hologram flickered out, Kay turned to face Gideon. The Moff's expression was unreadable, but there was a new glint in his eye, a mixture of respect and wariness. Impressive, Ms. Vess, he said softly. You bought us time. But remember, I'll be watching you very closely. Kay bowed slightly, her mind already racing ahead to the next move. I would expect nothing less, Moff Gideon. Now, shall we discuss our next steps in Project Fracture? As they left the bridge, Kay caught sight of Jalen lurking in a nearby corridor. A subtle nod passed between them. The game was growing more complex by the moment, but they were still in play. Back in her quarters, Kay slumped against the wall, the weight of the day's events crashing down on her. She'd just turned her back on a chance at legitimacy, at wiping her slate clean, but deep down she knew it had been the right call. They needed to be close to Project Fracture to have any hope of stopping it. Her comlink chirped softly. A coded message from the ghost. Package secure. Awaiting extraction coordinates. Kay allowed herself a small smile. While she'd been playing both sides on the bridge, Jalen had managed to slice into the Imperial networks, securing vital data on Project Fracture. They were making progress, but the stakes were higher than ever. As she began to formulate their next move, a tremor ran through the ship. Alarms blared, and Kay's comlink crackled to life with Gideon's voice. All hands, battle stations, we're under attack. Kay rushed to the viewpoint, her heart sinking at the sight before her. A massive fleet had just dropped out of hyperspace, ships bearing the marks of every major crime syndicate in the galaxy. Zerek Bash's words echoed in her mind. You've inadvertently started a war. As turbo-laser fire lit up the void of space, Vess realized that the real battle was only just beginning. Caught between the Imperial remnant, the New Republic, and now the combined might of the galactic underworld, she would need every ounce of her wit and skill to survive, let alone save the galaxy. The Origin Strand's power loomed over it all, a ticking chrono counting down to potential catastrophe. And at the center of the storm stood Vess, master thief turned reluctant hero, with the fate of history itself hanging in the balance. As she raced towards the hangar bay, Kay couldn't help but grin. After all, she'd always thrived in chaos. And things were about to get very chaotic indeed. Chapter 14. The Huttese Gamble. The acrid smell of spice and the cacophony of a dozen alien languages assaulted Kay's senses as she was roughly shoved into the grand audience. Chamber of Gronga the Hutt. The cavernous room, a garish display of ill-gotten wealth, was packed with the dregs of galactic society, bounty hunters, smugglers and crime lords from 100 worlds. Kay stumbled, her hands bound behind her back, but managed to keep her footing. She'd been separated from Jalen during the chaos of the space battle, barely escaping in a commandeered shuttle only to be captured by Hutt forces as soon as she'd entered the planet's atmosphere. At the far end of the chamber, lounging on a massive dais, was Gronga himself. The Hutt's enormous bulk quivered as he laughed, yellow eyes fixed on Kay with a mixture of amusement and hunger. "Kay Vess!" Gronga's voice boomed in Huttese, a protocol droid hastily translating. "The famous thief who thought she could play the entire galaxy for fools. How the mighty have fallen." Kay managed a cocky grin despite her predicament. "Gronga, you old slug. If you wanted a meeting, you could have just called. No need for the dramatic kidnapping." A ripple of nervous laughter went through the crowd. Gronga's eyes narrowed dangerously. "You dare joke! Do you know how many powerful beings want your head, Vess? The bounty on you could buy a small system." Kay's mind raced, assessing her options. She was weaponless, outnumbered, and in the heart of enemy territory. But she still had one asset: information. "True," she conceded, taking a step forward. The guards tensed, but didn't stop her. "But I'm worth far more to you alive than dead, Gronga. I have something you want, something everyone wants." The Hutt leaned forward, intrigued despite himself. "And what might that be?" Kay allowed herself a sly smile. "Information about the Origin Strand and Project Fracture." A hush fell over the chamber. Even the most hardened criminals knew of the mysterious artifact that had set the underworld ablaze with conflict. Gronga's laugh shook the room. "You expect me to believe that you, a simple thief, have information that has eluded the mightiest syndicates in the galaxy?" "Simple thief." Kay feigned offense. "Come now, Gronga. We both know I'm the best in the business. How else could I have stolen from the rogues gallery itself?" Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The Hutt's eyes widened slightly. He hadn't known about that particular feat. "Besides," Kay continued, warming to her theme, "who do you think started this whole syndicate war in the first place? It was a gamble, claiming credit for the chaos that had engulfed the criminal world. But Kay knew that in this company, audacity was often rewarded." Gronga was silent for a long moment, considering. Then he waved a pudgy hand, and Kay felt her bonds fall away. "Speak then, little thief. Impress me with your knowledge. But know that if you lie, your death will be long and painful." Kay rubbed her wrists, mind working furiously. She needed to give just enough truth to be valuable, without revealing too much. "The origin strand," she began, her voice carrying to every corner of the chamber, "is more than just a powerful artifact. It's a key to rewriting history itself." She went on to explain in carefully chosen words the basics of Project Fracture. The Empire's plan to use the strand to alter past events, to ensure their victory in the Galactic Civil War. As she spoke, Kay could see the implications dawning on her audience. Crime lords realized the potential to erase old enemies or change the outcomes of past schemes. Bounty hunters imagined altering failed hunts, and Gronga. Gronga saw the potential for unlimited power. "If what you say is true," the Hutt rumbled when she had finished, "then this strand is the most valuable object in the galaxy." Kay nodded. "Exactly. And right now it's in the hands of an Imperial moff named Gideon. But I know where he's taking it and how to get there." Gronga's eyes glittered with avarice. "And you would share this information with me. Why?" "Because, my corpulent friend," Kay said, allowing a hint of steel to enter her voice, "I want to stop them. The Empire, the New Republic, the other syndicates, they all want to use the strand for their own ends. But none of them understand the true danger it represents." She took a deep breath, knowing her next words could either save her or condemn her. "I propose an alliance. You provide me with a ship, a crew, and resources. In return, I'll lead you to the strand. Together we can ensure that no one faction gains control of it." The chamber erupted in shouts and arguments. Gronga silenced them with a thunderous bellow. "You play a dangerous game, Vess," he said, eyes narrowing. "How do I know this isn't some elaborate trick?" Kay spread her hands. "You don't? But ask yourself this. What do you have to lose? If I'm lying, you can always kill me later. But if I'm telling the truth..." She let the implication hang in the air. The potential rewards far outweighed the risks. Gronga was silent for a long moment, his huge form quivering slightly as he thought. Finally he spoke. "Very well, Kay Vess, you have your alliance, but know this, at the first sign of betrayal you will beg for the mercy of a quick death." Kay bowed low, hiding her triumphant smile. "I would expect nothing less, mighty Gronga." As the Hutt began barking orders to prepare a ship and crew, Kay allowed herself a moment of relief. She'd bought herself time and resources, but the real challenge was just beginning. Somewhere out there, Jalen was still in Imperial custody. The Ghost was in hiding with crucial data, and the origin strand grew closer to activation with each passing moment. Kay Vess had placed her bet. Now she could only hope that her gamble would pay off, for her sake and for the sake of the entire galaxy. As she was led away to prepare for the mission, Kay couldn't shake the feeling that she was balancing on the edge of a vibroblade. One wrong move, and everything would come crashing down. But then again, that's where she'd always thrived. Let the game begin. Chapter 15. Escape from Nar Shaddaa. The perpetual twilight of Nar Shaddaa's lower levels cast long shadows as Kay Vess crouched behind a rusted-out speeder, her breath coming in short gasps. The distant wail of sirens and the occasional burst of blaster fire served as a grim reminder of how quickly her alliance with Gronga the Hutt had soured. "I told you this was a bad idea," the Ghost's voice crackled through her comlink, tension evident even through the distortion. Kay allowed herself a wry smile despite the dire situation. Since when has that ever stopped me? She peered around the edge of her cover, taking in the scene. The narrow street was choked with debris and abandoned vehicles, the detritus of 1,000 desperate lives. Above, the towering spires of the upper levels vanished into smog and artificial light, a vertical maze of danger and opportunity. "All right, Ghost," Kay whispered. "I need a way off this rock. What do you got for me?" There was a moment of silence filled only by the sound of furious typing. "Okay, I've got good news and bad news. Good news is there's a neutral shipping port about 2 levels up and 3 sectors over. If we can get there, we might be able to commandeer a ship." Kay's eyes narrowed. "And the bad news?" "The bad news is that every bounty hunter, syndicate enforcer, and Hutt goon between here and there is looking for you. Oh, and Imperial forces have set up checkpoints on all major thoroughfares." "Fantastic," Kay muttered. She took a deep breath, centering herself. "All right, we've been in tighter spots. What's our play?" Before the ghost could respond, a new voice cut in, low, gravelly, and decidedly unfriendly. "How about you start by putting your hands where I can see them, Vess?" Kay froze, feeling the distinctive pressure of a blaster muzzle against the back of her head. Slowly she raised her hands, mind racing for a way out. "You know," she said conversationally, "it's considered rude in some cultures to sneak up on a lady." The voice chuckled, devoid of humour. "Good thing you're no lady. Now turn around slowly." Kay complied, coming face to face with a scarred Trandoshan bounty hunter. His scaled hide was crisscrossed with old wounds, and his eyes gleamed with predatory intelligence. "Bosk," Kay said, managing a cocky grin. "Long time no see. Still sore about that job on Corellia." The Trandoshan's tongue flicked out, tasting the air. "You cost me a lot of credits that day, Vess. But today I'm going to make it all back and then some." Kay's mind whirred, searching for an angle. "Come on, Bosk. You're smarter than this. You really think Gronga's going to pay out? He'll just as likely feed you to his rancor for bringing me in." Bosk's eyes narrowed, but Kay saw a flicker of doubt. She pressed on. "You want to know why everyone's after me? It's because I know about something big, something that could change everything." "The Origin Strand," Bosk hissed. "It's all anyone's talking about." Kay nodded. "Exactly, and I know where it is. More importantly, I know how to get to it. Now ask yourself, what's worth more, the bounty on my head, or a piece of the biggest score in galactic history?" For a long moment the only sound was the distant chaos of the city and Bosk's raspy breathing. Then, slowly, the Trandoshan lowered his blaster. "Talk fast, Vess. You've got 1 minute to convince me not to turn you in." Kay didn't waste a second. She laid out a simplified version of the situation, the Empire's plan, the New Republic's involvement, and the brewing syndicate war. As she spoke, she could see the gears turning in Bosk's reptilian brain. "So," the bounty hunter said when she'd finished, "you're saying that whoever controls this strand controls the future?" "Exactly," Kay nodded. "And right now it's in the hands of an Imperial moth who wants to rewrite history. I'm trying to stop that from happening." Bosk was quiet for a moment, considering. Then he let out a low, rumbling laugh. "You, playing the hero. Now I've heard everything." Kay shrugged. "What can I say? I contain multitudes. So, are you in or out?" The Trandoshan holstered his blaster. "In, for now. But the moment this stops being profitable—" Yeah, you'll eat me or something," Kay waved dismissively. "Now, how about we focus on getting off this moon?" With Bosk's help, they began to make their way through the labyrinthine streets of Nar Shaddah's undercity. The Trandoshan's reputation cleared a path through some of the rougher neighborhoods, while Kay's quick thinking got them past Imperial checkpoints. As they ascended through the levels of the city, Kay couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Her suspicions were confirmed when they entered a dimly lit plaza, only to find themselves surrounded by a mix of bounty hunters and syndicate enforcers. Well, a silky voice called out. A figure stepped forward, the Twi'lek curator from the Rogues Gallery, Madame Jora. "It seems the great Kay Vess has run out of luck." Kay's hand inched towards her blaster. "Zora, fancy meeting you here. Come to thank me for livening up your museum." Zora's laugh was cold and sharp. "Oh, I'll thank you all right, by collecting the bounty on your head." The tension in the plaza was palpable, a dozen fingers on trigger guards just waiting for an excuse. Kay's mind raced, searching for a way out. Then inspiration struck. "Before you do anything hasty," she called out, her voice carrying to every corner of the plaza, "you might want to consider the opportunity in front of you. You're all here for the same thing, the origin strand, but none of you know how to find it." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Kay pressed on. "I'm offering you a chance to be part of something bigger, a chance to rewrite history itself. All you have to do is help me get off this rock." For a moment, silence reigned. Then Zora stepped forward, her eyes narrowed. "Why should we trust you?" Kay spread her hands. "Because I'm the only one who knows where the strand is, and because right now I'm the only thing standing between you and the Empire, rewriting all of us out of existence." The standoff stretched on, seconds feeling like hours. Then, slowly, weapons began to lower. Zora's expression was unreadable as she considered Kay's words. Finally, she spoke. "We'll get you to the spaceport, but after that, you're on your own." Kay allowed herself a small smile of triumph. I wouldn't have it any other way. What followed was a mad dash through the upper levels of Nar Shaddaa, their unlikely alliance cutting a swath through Imperial checkpoints and rival gangs alike. Kay found herself in the surreal position of fighting alongside beings who, just hours ago, had been trying to kill her. As they neared the spaceport, alarms began to blare. The Empire had cottoned on to their plan. "Go!" Zora shouted, laying down covering fire as stormtroopers poured into the street. "We'll hold them off." Kay didn't need to be told twice. She and Bosk sprinted for the nearest ship, a battered but serviceable freighter. As they reached the boarding ramp, Kay turned back to see Zora and the others engaged in a fierce firefight with Imperial forces. For a moment she hesitated. Then Bosk's clawed hand clamped down on her shoulder. "Don't even think about it, Vess. We've got bigger fish to fry." Kay nodded grimly, following the Trandoshan into the ship. As they lifted off, breaking through Nar Shaddaa's polluted atmosphere, Kay allowed herself a moment of reflection. She'd come to the smuggler's moon looking for information and found herself at the center of a galactic power struggle. She'd made enemies, unlikely allies, and promises she wasn't sure she could keep. But as the stars stretched into lines of hyperspace, Vess felt a familiar thrill coursing through her veins. The game had changed, the stakes higher than ever before, and she was just getting started. "All right, Ghost," she said into her comlink as Bosk plotted their course. "Time to reunite the team. We've got a date with destiny and an empire to topple." As the ship hurtled through hyperspace, Kay allowed herself a grim smile. The real challenge was just beginning. Chapter 16, Shadows of the Past. The cantina on Takodana was a far cry from the glittering casinos of Canto Bight or the seedy dives of Nar Shaddaa. Nestled in the lush forests surrounding Maz Kanata's castle, it exuded an air of ancient mystery and neutrality that had made it a favoured meeting spot for those walking the line between light and shadow for centuries. Vess nursed a Corellian whiskey, her eyes constantly scanning the room. Bosk lounged nearby, his scaled hide drawing curious glances from the cantina's eclectic patronage. "You sure about this, Vess?" the Trandoshan growled, his clawed hand never far from his blaster. "Seems like a good way to walk into a trap." Kay shrugged, feigning a nonchalance she didn't entirely feel. "Maz's place is neutral ground. Besides, if he wanted me dead, he's had plenty of opportunities over the years." As if summoned by her words, a hooded figure slipped into the seat across from her. Kay's breath caught in her throat as familiar hands lowered the hood, revealing a face she hadn't seen in over a decade. "Hello, little shadow," the man said, his voice gravelly with age but still carrying the warmth she remembered. "It's been a long time." "Davinoros," Kay breathed, a mix of emotions swirling within her. "I wasn't sure you'd come." Davin's weathered face creased in a smile. "When the best thief in the galaxy calls in a favour, only a fool would ignore it." His eyes flicked to Bosk. "Though I see you're keeping interesting company these days." Kay waved a hand dismissively. "Desperate times, old man. But let's cut to the chase." I need information, and you're the only one I'd trust to give it to me straight." David leaned back, his expression growing serious. "The Origins strand. I should have known you'd get mixed up in that mess eventually." Kay's eyes widened. "You know about the strand? How?" The old man sighed, suddenly looking every one of his years. "Because, my dear, it's the reason I took you in all those years ago." The cantina seemed to fade away as Kay processed his words. "What are you talking about?" David glanced around, then leaned in close. "Your parents. They weren't simple moisture farmers on Tatooine, Kay. They were archaeologists specializing in ancient Force artifacts. They were the ones who first discovered the Origin strand." Kay felt as if the floor had dropped out from beneath her. "But you told me they were killed in a Tusken raid." "A convenient cover story," David said, his voice heavy with regret. "The truth is, they were murdered by agents of the Empire. They hid you away and contacted me, an old friend from their wilder days, to keep you safe." Memories flashed through Kay's mind, disjointed images of a life she'd thought long forgotten. A woman's gentle laugh, a man's strong hands showing her how to decipher ancient symbols. "Why didn't you tell me?" she demanded, anger and confusion warring within her. David's eyes were sad. "To protect you. The less you knew, the safer you were. I taught you everything I knew about thieving and survival, hoping it would be enough to keep you alive if the Empire ever caught up to us." Kay's mind reeled. "So all those years, all those lessons, it was never about making me a master thief." "Oh, it was," Davin chuckled. "But it was also about preparing you for this moment. Your parents believed the strand was too dangerous for anyone to control. They dedicated their lives to keeping it hidden, to understanding its true nature. And now the Empire is closer than ever to unlocking its power," Kay finished, the weight of her unwitting destiny settling on her shoulders. David nodded gravely. "Which is why I'm here. Your parents left behind a journal, a record of their research, and a map to where they hid the key to unlocking the strand's full potential." He reached into his cloak, producing an old leather-bound book. As he slid it across the table, Kay felt a strange resonance, as if the very atoms of her being were responding to its presence. "Be careful, little shadow," David warned. "The secrets in those pages, they're not just about the strand. They're about you." Kay's hand hovered over the journal, suddenly unsure. "What do you mean?" David's expression was unreadable. "Your parents' research. It changed them, and in turn, it changed you. The strand's energy. It's a part of you, Kay. It always has been." The implications hit Kay like a blast from a star destroyer. "Are you saying I'm Force-sensitive?" "Not exactly," David shook his head. "It's something different, something unique. You have a connection to the strand that no one else does. It's why you've always been able to pull off the impossible, to be in the right place at the right time." Kay sat back, her mind whirling. Every impossible heist, every narrow escape, had it all been leading to this? Bosk, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke up. "So what you're saying is Vess here is our best shot at stopping the Empire from rewriting history?" Davin nodded solemnly. "She may be our only shot." Kay stared at the journal, feeling the weight of history, past and future, pressing down on her. "I never wanted to be a hero," she said softly. Davin reached out, placing a weathered hand over hers. "I know, little shadow, but sometimes the galaxy has other plans for us. Your parents believed in you. They knew that when the time came you'd make the right choice." For a long moment the cantina was silent save for the ambient noise of distant conversations and clinking glasses. Then, with a deep breath, Kay picked up the journal. "All right," she said, a hint of her old bravado returning. "Let's see what kind of family secrets we're dealing with." As she opened the book, a small holodisc fell out. When activated, it showed an image that made Kay's heart clench. A man and woman smiling with a young girl between them. Her family whole and happy. "Remember, Kay," David said softly, "no matter what you learn, no matter what you become, you are still you. The choices you make are your own." Kay nodded, feeling a mix of fear and determination coursing through her. "Well then, old man, I'd say it's time for one last lesson. How about you help your star pupil save the galaxy?" Davin's laugh was warm and familiar, a sound from a happier past. "I thought you'd never ask, little shadow." As they bent their heads over the journal, delving into the secrets of Kay's past and the future of the galaxy, Kay Vess felt something she hadn't experienced in years, a sense of belonging, of purpose. The origin strand had been a part of her all along. Now it was time to embrace that destiny and finish what her parents had started. The shadows of the past had finally caught up with her. But in those shadows, Kay found not just answers, but hope. The real adventure was just beginning. Chapter 17, The Crimson Double Cross. The opulent yacht cruised through the star-studded expanse of the Cherba sector, its sleek lines belying the deadly purpose of its occupants. Kay Vess adjusted the collar of her stolen Crimson Dawn uniform, fighting the urge to scratch at the temporary tattoos that marked her as a low-ranking enforcer. "Remind me again why I let you talk me into this." Bosk's gravelly voice came through her concealed comlink, tinged with annoyance. Kay suppressed a smile. The Trandoshan was stationed in a nearby asteroid field, ready to swoop in for extraction when needed. "Because, my scaly friend, Crimson Dawn has information we need, and they're not exactly the arse-nicely type." "And why couldn't the old man handle this part?" Bosk grumbled, referring to Davin, who was busy decoding more of Kay's parents' journal. "Because," Kay muttered, nodding to a passing officer, "I'm the one with the connection to the strand. I'll know what to look for." The yacht's interior was a testament to Crimson Dawn's power and wealth. Priceless artifacts from 100 worlds lined the corridors, while beings from across the galaxy mingled in sumptuous lounges. But Kay knew that beneath the veneer of civility this was a den of killers and thieves. Her target was Morna Dim, a high-ranking Crimson Dawn lieutenant, rumoured to be overseeing their search for the origin strand. According to Kay's sources, Dim was holding court in the yacht's main ballroom, entertaining potential allies and rivals alike. As Kay entered the vast chamber, she was momentarily overwhelmed by the sensory assault. Holographic dancers twirled overhead, their ethereal forms shifting in time to the pulsing music. The air was thick with exotic perfumes and the acrid tang of spice. She spotted Dim almost immediately, a statuesque feline woman, her green skin shimmering under the ballroom's shifting lights. Kay began to make her way through the crowd, all senses on high alert. "Well, well," a silky voice purred in her ear, "what have we here?" Kay turned to find herself face-to-face with a familiar Twi'lek, Madame Jora from the Rogues Gallery. For a heart-stopping moment, Kay thought her cover was blown. Then she saw the glassy look in Zora's eyes, the slight sway in her stance. The Twi'lek was intoxicated, likely from a combination of alcohol and spice. Kay affected a gruff voice, pitching it lower than her normal tone. "Just doing my job, ma'am. Making sure everything's secure." Zora laughed, the sound tinkling like broken glass. "Oh, you Crimson Dawn types. Always so serious." She leaned in close, her breath hot on Kay's ear. "But I know a secret. Want to hear it?" Every instinct screamed at Kay to disengage, to continue with her mission. But something in Zora's tone made her pause. "What kind of secret?" The Twi'lek's eyes darted around the room before settling back on Kay. "It's about the strand. Morna thinks she's so clever, but she doesn't know what I know." Kay's pulse quickened. "And what's that?" But before Zora could answer, a commotion near the ballroom's entrance drew their attention. A group of newcomers had arrived, and at their head was a face Kay had hoped never to see again. Chira, the infamous leader of Crimson Dawn herself. "Shove it," Kay muttered under her breath. This complicated things exponentially. As Chira made her way through the crowd, beings parting before her like water, Kay saw her opportunity slipping away. She needed to act fast. With a muttered apology to Zora, Kay began to move towards Morna Dim. If she could just get close enough to plant the datasphere the ghost had provided, she might be able to slice into Crimson Dawn's network, and a hand clamped down on her shoulder with bruising force. Kay found herself spun around, staring into the cold eyes of one of Chira's personal guards. "You," the guard growled. "Come with me." Kay's mind raced, searching for a way out. But surrounded by Crimson Dawn's elite, any wrong move could be fatal. She allowed herself to be led towards Chira, who was now deep in conversation with Morna Dim.
As they approached, Kay caught snippets of their exchange.
"D, definitely on Terminus," Morna was saying. "Our sources confirm the Imperial presence has tripled in the past week." Chira nodded, her expression thoughtful. "Then that's where we'll find the key. Prepare the fleet. We move in 3 standard days." Kay's heart leapt. Terminus, that had to be where the Empire was setting up Project Fracture. It was the break they'd been looking for. But her elation was short-lived as Chira's attention turned to her. "And who do we have here?" the Crimson Dawn leader asked, her voice deceptively soft. The guard shoved Kay forward. "Found her snooping around, ma'am. Doesn't match any of our personnel files." Chira's eyes narrowed as she studied Kay's face. "No," she said slowly, "I don't believe she does. In fact, I think we might have ourselves a rather infamous guess. Isn't that right?" Miss Vess Kay's blood ran cold. But years of close calls and narrow escapes had honed her instincts. Instead of denying it, she straightened, meeting Chira's gaze with a cocky grin. "Guilty as charged," she said with a shrug. "I have to say, Chira, your security's slipping. I've been here for hours." A ripple of tension went through the gathered crowd. Morna Dim's hand went to her blaster, but Chira held up a hand, staying her lieutenant. "I'm curious, Kay," Chira said, circling her like a Nexus stalking its prey. "What could possibly motivate you to walk into the proverbial ranker's den? It must be something truly valuable." Kay's mind raced, weighing her options. Then, drawing on everything she'd learned from her parents' journal, she made a gamble. "The same thing that's motivated you to gather all these lovely people here," she said, gesturing to the assembled crime lords and syndicate representatives. "The origin strand. Except I know something you don't." Chira's eyebrow arched. "Oh, and what might that be?" Kay allowed a hint of her true connection to the strand to surface, feeling the familiar resonance humming through her veins. "I know how to use it." The ballroom fell silent, all eyes on the confrontation unfolding before them. Kay could practically see the gears turning in Chira's mind, weighing the potential benefits against the risks. Finally, Chira spoke. "Morna, have the fleet prepare for departure. It seems our timetable is moved up." To Kay she added, "You'll be coming with us, Miss Vess. I do hope for your sake that you're not bluffing." As Kay was led away, surrounded by heavily armed guards, she caught a glimpse of Madame Shora watching her with a mixture of awe and fear. Whatever secret the Twi'lek had been about to share, it would have to wait. "Bosk," Kay sub-vocalized into her concealed comlink. "Change of plans. Looks like we're headed to Terminus. Alert Davin and the others. Things are about to get interesting." As the yacht prepared for hyperspace, Vess found herself in the unprecedented position of being both prisoner and potential ally to one of the galaxy's most dangerous criminal organizations. But as the stars stretched into lines outside the viewports, she felt a fierce grin spread across her face. The game had changed, but she was still in play. And with the knowledge from her parents' journal and her unique connection to the Strand, she had an advantage none of her opponents could anticipate. Terminus awaited, and with it, the fate of the galaxy. Vess was ready to make her move. Chapter 18, Guardians of the Strand. The icy winds of Terminus howled across barren tundra as Vess trudged through knee-deep snow, her breath forming clouds in the frigid air. Behind her, the sleek lines of Chira's yacht stood out starkly against the bleak landscape, a reminder of the tenuous alliance that had brought her to this forsaken world. "I'm telling you," Kay shouted over the wind to Chira, who walked beside her, wrapped in expensive thermal gear, "the Strand isn't just sitting in some Imperial vault. If my parents' research is correct, we're looking for something much older. Chira's eyes narrowed against the biting cold. And you're certain it's here? This wasteland doesn't seem like the ideal hiding place for a galaxy-altering artifact. Kay was about to respond when something caught her eye, a glint of metal, barely visible beneath the snow. She knelt, brushing away the icy crust to reveal an ancient symbol etched into a metal plate. "There!" she breathed, excitement overriding the cold. This is it. As if triggered by her touch, the ground beneath them began to rumble. Kay and Chira stumbled back as a massive door, long hidden beneath ice and snow, ground open. Warm air rushed out, carrying with it the scent of incense and old stone. A passage led down into darkness, its walls adorned with glowing symbols that pulsed with an otherworldly light. "Well," Chira said, a hint of awe in her voice, "it seems your parents' research was worth the risk after all." They descended into the hidden complex, Kay's heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. The passageway opened into a vast chamber, its ceiling lost in shadows high above. At its center stood a group of robed figures, their faces hidden beneath deep hoods. One stepped forward, pushing back their hood to reveal the weathered face of a Serian male. "Welcome, Kay Vess," he said, his voice carrying the weight of ages. "We have been expecting you." Kay blinked in surprise. "You know who I am?" The Syrian nodded solemnly. "We are the guardians of the strand, sworn to protect the balance. We have watched over the origin strand for millennia, waiting for the one who would come to either save or doom us all." Chira's hand drifted to her blaster. "If you've been guarding this artifact all this time, why reveal yourselves now?" "Because," another guardian spoke, her voice soft but firm, "the balance has been disrupted. The Empire's meddling threatens not just this timeline, but all possible futures." The first guardian turned his attention back to Kay. "You carry within you the essence of the strand passed down through your bloodline. Only you can truly wield its power." Kay's mind reeled. The connection she'd felt, the impossible luck that had followed her throughout her life, it all suddenly made sense. "But why me? Why my family?" The guardian gestured, and the air between them shimmered. An image formed, a swirling nexus of energy, threads of possibility branching out in every direction. "The origin strand is not merely an artifact," he explained. "It is a focal point of reality itself, a nexus where all potential timelines converge. Your ancestors were chosen as its protectors because they possessed a unique sensitivity to these temporal energies." Kay stared at the image, mesmerized by the swirling possibilities. "And the Empire, what do they want with it?" The female guardian stepped forward. "They seek to use the strand to alter the past, to ensure their victory in the galactic civil war. But they do not understand the true consequences of such actions." "Unmaking reality itself," Kay whispered, the full weight of the situation crashing down on her. Chira, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke. "This is all fascinating, truly, but I came here for power, not a history lesson. Where is the strand?" The guardians exchanged glances. Then, with a wave of his hand, the Syrian revealed a small alcove in the chamber's wall. Within it floated a familiar object, the origin strand, pulsing with barely contained energy. Kay felt drawn to it, every fibre of her being resonating with its power. But as she took a step forward, alarms began to blare throughout the complex. "We have been breached," one of the guardians announced, fear evident in their voice. "The Empire has found us." Chaos erupted in the chamber. Chira barked orders into her comlink, summoning her Crimson Dawn forces. The Guardians moved to defensive positions, ancient weapons springing to life in their hands, and at the center of it all stood Kay Vess, torn between the artifact that was her birthright and the coming storm that threatened to tear reality apart. "You must choose," the Syrian Guardian said urgently. "Take up the strand and fulfill your destiny, or leave it here and doom us all." Kay's mind raced. Everything she'd learned, every step of her journey, had led to this moment. She thought of her parents, of Davin, of all the people who had shaped her path. With a deep breath, she stepped towards the alcove. The moment her fingers touched the strand, a surge of energy coursed through her. Visions flashed before her eyes, countless possible futures, lives lived and unlived, victories and defeats across 1,000,000 timelines. Keiichira's voice cut through the visions. "We need to move now." The sound of blaster fire echoed from the passageway. Imperial forces were closing in, drawn by the power they sought to control. Kei turned to the Guardians, the Origin strand humming with energy in her grasp. "What do I do? How do I stop this?" The Serian's eyes were sad but resolute. "The power is within you, child of the strand. Trust in the balance, but be warned. To change the course of time is to bear the weight of all possible futures." As the first stormtroopers burst into the chamber, Kei made her decision. With the strand in one hand and her blaster in the other, she prepared to face the coming storm. The fate of the galaxy, of all possible galaxies, hung in the balance, and Kei Vess, thief-turned-reluctant hero, stood at the center of it all. The true test was about to begin. Chapter 19, The Last Podrace. The twin sons of Tatooine beat down mercilessly on Mos Espa's infamous podracing arena. Kei Vess wiped sweat from her brow as she made final adjustments to her cobbled-together podracer, the Origin strand humming softly in a pouch at her side. "Remind me again why we're doing this," Boss growled, his scales glistening in the heat as he handed Kei a Hydra spanner. Kei grinned, tightening a loose coupling on one of the massive engines. "Because, my scaly friend, to stop the Empire we need credits, and lots of them. The prize purse from this race could fund our entire operation." She paused, her expression growing serious. "Plus, rumor has it the Empire's got a ringer in this race. If we can beat them here, it might buy us the time we need to figure out how to use the strand." Bosk snorted. "And you really think you can win against professional racers and Imperial ace pilots?" Kei patted the pouch containing the strand. "Let's just say I've got a good feeling about this." The announcement klaxon blared, signaling racers to take their positions. Kei climbed into the cockpit, strapping herself in as Bosk performed one last systems check. "Kei," the Trandoshan said, uncharacteristic concern in his voice, "be careful out there. This isn't like stealing from some fancy museum." "Podracing is. Deadly," Kei finished with a wink. "Don't worry, I'll be fine. Just make sure Davin and the others are ready with the ship. Win or lose, we'll need a quick exit." As Bosk retreated to the stands, Kei surveyed her competition. To her left, a hulking Dug sneered at her, his podracer a menacing construct of black metal and crimson accents. To her right, a lithe Twi'lek woman made final adjustments to a sleek, obviously custom-built machine. And there, at the far end of the starting grid, sat a gleaming podracer bearing the insignia of the Imperial Remnant. Its pilot, face hidden behind a black helmet, exuded an aura of cold confidence. Kei took a deep breath, centering herself. She could feel the energy of the strand pulsing in time with her heartbeat, a reminder of the power she now carried. The crowd's roar reached a fever pitch as the starting lights began to flash. Kei's hands tightened on the controls, every sense hyper-alert. Green. The race was on. Kei slammed the throttle forward, her podracer leaping off the starting line with a bone-jarring jolt. The arena blurred around her as she rocketed into the first turn, jockeying for position among the pack of racers. The course took them out of Mos Espa and into the Jundland Wastes, a treacherous maze of canyons and rock formations. Kei weaved through the narrow passages, her reflexes operating on a level she'd never experienced before. It was as if she could sense the turns before they appeared, anticipate the movements of her rivals before they made them. The strand, she realized with a mix of awe and trepidation. Its power was flowing through her, enhancing her natural abilities. Halfway through the first lap, disaster struck. The Dug racer, frustrated at being outmaneuvered, slammed into Kei's left engine. Alarms blared in the cockpit as smoke poured from the damaged thruster. Come on. Kay muttered, fighting to keep control as her podracer lurched dangerously to one side. She could see the Imperial racer pulling ahead, taking advantage of the chaos. In that moment, time seemed to slow. Kay felt a surge of energy from the strand, and suddenly she could see not just the race before her, but a dozen possible outcomes branching out like threads of light. Acting on instinct, she made a series of lightning-fast adjustments. Her damaged engine sputtered, then roared back to life with renewed power. Kay shot forward, threading the needle between two rock formations that her competitors were forced to go around. As they entered the second lap, Kay found herself neck and neck with the Imperial racer. The two machines thundered across the salt flats, neither giving an inch. "Impressive," the Imperial pilot's voice crackled over the short-range comm, "but ultimately futile. The Empire will have the strand one way or another." Kay grinned, despite the dire nature of the situation. "Sorry, buddy, but I'm not handing over my family heirloom that easily." They entered the notorious Beggar's Canyon, a twisting gorge that had claimed the lives of countless racers. Kay and her Imperial rival ducked and weaved through the narrow passage, their podracers mere centimeters from the jagged walls. As they approached the final stretch, Kay could see the finish line in the distance. The Imperial racer had a slight lead, its superior machine beginning to pull away. Kay closed her eyes for a brief moment, reaching out to the power of the strand. She felt a connection not just to the artifact, but to the very fabric of time and space around her. In that instant, she understood what she needed to do. With a surge of energy, Kay's podracer leapt forward, the engines glowing with an otherworldly light. She passed the Imperial racer as if it were standing still, crossing the finish line a full second ahead. The crowd erupted in cheers as Kay brought her smoking, battered podracer to a halt. She climbed out on shaky legs, her mind reeling from the experience. Bosk was there in an instant, supporting her as she stumbled. "You did it," he said, a rare note of admiration in his voice. "I don't know how, but you did it." Kay managed a weak smile. "Let's just say I had a little help from my ancestors." As the award ceremony began, Kay caught sight of the Imperial pilot conferring urgently with a group of officers near the exit. Their body language spoke volumes. This setback would not be taken lightly. "We need to move," Kay said to Bosk. "Things are about to get complicated." No sooner had the words left her mouth than the sound of TIE fighters filled the air. Imperial stormtroopers began pouring into the arena, their intentions clear. Kay Davin's voice crackled over her comlink. "We've got the ship ready, but we've got company, lots of it." Kay's hand went to the pouch containing the strand. Its energy hummed in response, filling her with a sense of purpose. "All right," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos erupting around them. "Time to see what this thing can really do." As blaster fire erupted across the arena, Vess prepared to make her escape. The race was won, but the real challenge was just beginning. With the power of the Origin strand at her fingertips and the fate of the galaxy hanging in the balance, Kay knew that every decision from this point on would shape the course of history. It was time to take the fight to the Empire. Chapter 20, Starforge Station. The vastness of space seemed to bend around Starforge Station, its massive form a testament to Imperial engineering and hubris. Kay Vess stood at the viewport of their stolen Imperial shuttle, the Origin strand pulsing gently against her side. "Remind me again why we're flying straight into the Ranker's den." Bosk grumbled from the pilot's seat, his clawed hands tense on the controls. Kay's eyes never left the approaching station. "Because, my scaly friend, according to my parents' journal, the final component we need to fully activate the strand is hidden somewhere in that monstrosity." Davin Oros, looking older than ever in the harsh light of the cockpit, nodded grimly. "And if the Empire gets their hands on it first, then all of reality as we know it goes up in smoke," Kay finished. She turned to address their motley crew, Bosk, Davin, Jalen, and the ever-present holographic form of the Ghost. "All right, team, let's go over the plan one last time." As Kay outlined their strategy, the comm system crackled to life. Imperial Shuttle Alexis-7, transmit clearance codes immediately. Bosk keyed in the codes they'd obtained through less-than-legal means, his reptilian features tense. For a moment, silence stretched across the void. Then, Alexis-7, you are cleared for docking in Bay 94. Welcome to Starforge Station. A collective sigh of relief filled the cockpit as they maneuvered towards their assigned bay. Kay couldn't shake the feeling that they were flying into something far bigger than they'd anticipated. The docking procedure went smoothly, almost too smoothly. As they disembarked, Kay's hand never strayed far from her blaster. The cavernous hangar bay was a hive of activity, filled with ships from across the galaxy. She noted Imperial vessels alongside those bearing the marks of various crime syndicates. "Looks like we're not the only ones after the prize," Jalen murmured, their Tuscan wrappings replaced by nondescript spacer attire. Kay nodded. "Stick to the plan. Boss, Q, and Dovin head for the central computer core. See if you can slice into their systems and locate the component. Jalen, you're with me. We'll make our way to the upper levels and see what we can find." As the team split up, Kay felt the strand's energy surge. She stumbled, momentarily overwhelmed by a flood of possible futures, glimpses of triumph, disaster, and everything in between. "Kay." Jalen's concerned voice cut through the visions. "Are you all right?" She shook her head to clear it. "Yeah, I'm fine. The strand. It's getting stronger the closer we get to the component. Come on, we need to move." They made their way through the labyrinthine corridors of Starforge Station, using stolen clearance codes to bypass security checkpoints. The station was a marvel of engineering, with levels dedicated to research, manufacturing, and what looked suspiciously like superweapon development. As they neared the upper levels, Kay's comlink chirped softly.
"Kay, it's Ghost. I've managed to tap into the station's internal sensors."
"You've got company heading your way, looks like Crimson Dawn operatives." Kay swore under her breath. "Chira. Should have known she'd be here. Any sign of Imperial leadership?" "Negative," Ghost replied, "but there's a lot of chatter about a high-level meeting in the station's command center. Whatever's going down, it's happening soon." They rounded a corner and came face to face with a squad of Crimson Dawn enforcers. For a heartbeat, both groups froze in surprise. Then all hell broke loose. Blaster fire filled the corridor as Kay and Jalen dove for cover. The former Jedi's lightsaber sprang to life, deflecting bolts with preternatural speed. Kay returned fire, her shots finding their marks with uncanny accuracy. Another gift from the strand, she realized. As the last enforcer fell, Kay's comlink crackled again. "Kay." Bosk's urgent voice came through. "We've got a problem. The component, it's in the command center, and you're not going to believe who's up there." "Let me guess," Kay said grimly. "Moff Gideon." "Worse," Bosk replied. "Everyone. Gideon, Chira, representatives from every major syndicate. It's a criffing auction, Kay. They're bidding on the future of the galaxy." Kay's mind raced. The situation had just gone from bad to catastrophic. "All right, change of plans, Bosk. David, make your way to the command center. We'll meet you there." As they fought their way upward through the station, Kay could feel the strand's power growing. Visions flashed before her eyes with increasing frequency, possible futures branching out like a web of light and shadow. They reached the antechamber outside the command center, linking up with Bosk and Davin. Through the reinforced doors they could hear the muffled sounds of heated argument. "So," Davin said, a wry smile on his weathered face, "I don't suppose you have a plan for crashing the galaxy's most dangerous dinner party?" Kay's hand went to the strand, feeling its pulsing energy. "As a matter of fact, I do, but you're not going to like it." She outlined her idea quickly. Jalen's eyes widened behind their goggles. "Kay, that's insane. The risk is necessary," Kay finished. "We're out of options and out of time. Jalen, I need you to use the Force to enhance the strand's power. Bosk, Davin, be ready to move fast." Before anyone could object further, Kay closed her eyes and reached out to the strand. She felt its energy surging through her, connecting her to the very fabric of time and space. With Jalen's help, she pushed that power outward, enveloping the entire command center. For a moment, reality itself seemed to waver. Then, with a sound like shattering glass, the doors to the command center disintegrated. Kay strode forward, the strand glowing with blinding intensity. The assembled crime lords, imperial officers, and syndicate representatives turned as one, their faces masks of shock and fear. "Gentlemen, ladies, and assorted scum of the galaxy," Kay announced, her voice resonating with otherworldly power. "I'm afraid this auction is closed." As blasters were drawn and safeties disengaged, Kay Vess stood at the center of a storm of her own making. The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance, and the final battle for the origin strand was about to begin. Whatever happened next would reshape the course of history, and Kay was determined to ensure that the future remained free. Chapter 21, The Awakening. Time seemed to stand still in the command center of Starforge Station. Kay Vess stood at its heart, the origin strand pulsing with blinding energy in her outstretched hand. Around her, the galaxy's most dangerous beings, crime lords, imperial officers and syndicate leaders were frozen in a tableau of shock and fear. Moff Gideon was the first to recover, his hand inching towards his blaster. "Vess," he snarled, "you have no idea what forces you're meddling with." Kay's eyes glowing with an otherworldly light fixed on the imperial officer. "Oh, I think I have a pretty good idea, Gideon. The question is, do you?" With a thought, she sent a pulse of energy through the room. Weapons flew from hands, clattering uselessly to the floor. The assembled villains found themselves pushed back, pinned against the walls by an invisible force. Shira, struggling against the unseen bonds, managed a wry smile. "I have to hand it to you, Kay. You certainly know how to make an entrance." "Enough." Gideon's voice cut through the chaos. "You may have the strand, Vess, but you lack the final component. Without it, you're just a thief playing with powers beyond your comprehension." Kay's confident smirk faltered for just a moment. He was right. They still hadn't located the crucial piece needed to fully activate the strand's power. Suddenly, Jalen's voice rang out. "Kay, behind you!" She spun to see a previously hidden door sliding open. From its shadows emerged a figure that made her blood run cold, Zerek Bash, the crime lord who had set this whole chain of events in motion. And in his hand gleamed a small, intricate device that pulsed in time with the strand.
"Looking for this?"
Bash's smooth voice carried an edge of triumph. "I must thank you all for making my job so much easier. While you squabbled over scraps, I acquired the true prize." Kay's mind raced. If Bash combined the component with the strand, there was no telling what havoc he could wreak across time and space. "Bash," she said, fighting to keep her voice steady, "you don't know what you're doing. The strand isn't just some weapon you can control. It's connected to the very fabric of reality." The crime lord's laugh was cold and mirthless. "Oh, I'm well aware, Miss Vess. Why do you think I orchestrated this whole affair? The Syndicate War, the Imperial involvement, all of it was to bring us to this moment." As he spoke, Bash began to advance, the component in his hand glowing brighter with each step. Kay could feel the strand responding, its power surging almost painfully through her body. Kay Daven's voice cut through her rising panic. "Remember what your parents wrote. The strand isn't just a tool, it's a part of you. Trust in that connection." Time seemed to slow as Kay closed her eyes, reaching deep within herself. She felt the echoes of countless generations, the weight of the responsibility passed down through her bloodline. The strand wasn't just an artifact, it was her heritage, her destiny. Her eyes snapped open, blazing with renewed purpose. "You want to see what the strand can really do, Bash? Be my guest." With a gesture, she released her hold on the room. In the ensuing chaos, as blaster fire erupted and allegiances shattered, Kay launched herself towards Bash. The moment her hand touched the component, a blinding flash of energy erupted. Kay felt herself falling, tumbling through an endless vortex of light and shadow. Visions assaulted her senses, countless possible futures, paths not taken, lives unlived. She saw the rise and fall of empires, the birth and death of stars, the very turning of the cosmic wheel. And through it all, a voice, ancient, powerful, and achingly familiar. "Hello, little one," it said, filled with warmth and sorrow in equal measure. "We've been waiting for you." Kay found herself standing in a place beyond place, a nexus where all of time and space seemed to converge. Before her stood two figures, a man and a woman, their features both strange and intimately familiar. "Mom, Dad." Kay's voice cracked with emotion. Her parents smiled, their forms shimmering with the same energy that coursed through the strand. "We don't have much time," her mother said. "The power of the strand is fully awakened, but it comes at a great cost. The Empire, the syndicates, they all sought to use the strand to reshape reality to their will," her father continued. "But its true purpose is to maintain the balance, to ensure that no one power can dominate the flow of time." Kay's mind reeled. "But why me? Why our family?" "Because," her mother said gently, "we are the guardians of that balance. Our bloodline is tied to the strand, tasked with protecting the integrity of time itself." As understanding dawned, Kay felt the full weight of her destiny settling upon her shoulders. "What do I need to do?" Her parents exchanged a look of mingled pride and sadness. "You must make a choice," her father said. "The strand's power can be used one final time before it must be sealed away. You can reshape reality, undo the damage caused by those who sought to control it. But," her mother added, "doing so will come at a great personal cost. The timeline will be altered, and your own existence, your memories, your experiences may be changed or erased entirely." Kay's heart raced as she considered the implications. Everything she'd been through, everyone she'd met, it could all be undone. But the alternative was to let the galaxy fall into chaos with the strand's power up for grabs. "There has to be another way," she said, desperation creeping into her voice. Her parents smiled sadly. "There's always another way, little one, but the choice must be yours." As if in response to her turmoil, the nexus around them began to shift. Kay caught glimpses of her friends, Jalen, Bosk, Davin, the Ghost, fighting desperately against overwhelming odds back on Starforge Station. She saw Bash and Gideon, their temporary alliance already fracturing as they grappled for control of the strand's power. And beyond them, she sensed the fabric of reality itself beginning to fray under the strain of so much temporal manipulation. Kay Vess, master thief turned reluctant hero, stood at the crossroads of time. The power to reshape the galaxy was literally in her hands. But the cost was almost too much to bear. As the visions of conflict and chaos swirled around her, Kay closed her eyes, reaching deep within herself for the wisdom to make the right choice. The fate of not just the galaxy, but all of reality, hung in the balance. And Kay Vess was the only one who could tip the scales. Chapter 22, Fall of the Syndicates. The swirling vortex of time and space collapsed around Kay Vess as she made her choice. She opened her eyes to find herself back in the command center of Starforge Station, the origin strand blazing with power in her hands. Only a heartbeat had passed in real time, but Kay felt the weight of eons pressing down upon her. "I'm sorry," she whispered to the echoes of her parents, still lingering in her mind, "but I can't sacrifice everything we've fought for." With newfound resolve, Kay raised the strand high. Its light filled the room, freezing everyone in place once more. But this time, Kay could see beyond the physical. Threads of possibility stretched out from each person, connecting them to vast networks of power and influence across the galaxy. "You all wanted to reshape reality," Kay's voice resonated with otherworldly authority. "Well, congratulations. You're about to get your wish." She focused on Zerek Bash first, the crime lord who had set this whole chain of events in motion. With a thought, Kay began to unravel the threads of his criminal empire. Across the galaxy, scenes of chaos unfolded. On Nar Shaddaa, hidden vaults burst open, spilling incriminating data onto the holonet. Bash's lieutenants found their accounts emptied, their secrets exposed. In the Corellian sector, a fleet of Black Sun ships suddenly found their navigation systems scrambled, flying straight into a New Republic patrol. On Kessel, the carefully maintained spice operations collapsed as machinery failed and slaves revolted, armed with weapons that seemed to appear out of thin air. Bash's eyes widened in horror as he felt his power crumbling. "What have you done?" he snarled, struggling against the Strand's hold. Kay turned her attention to the other syndicate leaders and Imperial officers. One by one she traced their connections, dismantling the structures of corruption and oppression they had built. Chirrut watched in a mixture of awe and fear as reports flooded in of Crimson Dawn cells falling to internal strife and rival gangs. Moff Gideon's face contorted in rage as his carefully laid plans for Imperial resurgence collapsed, secret bases exposed and superweapon projects sabotaged. Throughout the galaxy, the underworld was in upheaval. But Kay didn't stop there. She reached deeper, using the Strand's power to plant seeds of change. Enslaved populations found themselves armed and organized, rising up against their oppressors. Corrupted officials were exposed, their misdeeds broadcast for all to see. Long-hidden caches of wealth were revealed, redistributed to struggling communities. As the scale of what was happening became clear, the assembled villains in the command center began to panic. Some begged for mercy, others tried to bargain, and a few made desperate attempts to attack Kay. But she stood unmoved, the eye of a storm that was reshaping the galaxy. Jalen stepped forward, awe in their voice. "Kay, this is incredible. But the strain on reality, can the Strand handle this much change?" Kay nodded grimly. "It can, but not for long. We need to finish this." She turned her attention back to Bash, who was now on his knees, his once immaculate clothes in disarray. "You wanted to rule the galaxy's underworld," Kay said, her voice cold. "Let's see how you like being the one exploited and oppressed." With a gesture, she rewove the threads of Bash's existence. The crime lord gasped as a lifetime of new memories flooded his mind. Years spent as a lowly spice miner, suffering under the very system he had once controlled. "No," Bash whispered, broken. "This can't be real." "Oh, it's real," Kay assured him, "and it's permanent. Consider it a taste of justice for all the lives you've ruined." One by one, Kay dealt with each of the major players in the room. Some, like Chirrut, she gave a chance at redemption, rewriting their paths to use their skills for good. Others, like Moff Gideon, she ensured would face justice for their crimes. As the last of the syndicate leaders fell, Kay felt the Strand's power beginning to wane. The strain of holding reality in flux was taking its toll. "Kay," Davin's worried voice cut through her concentration, "you need to stop. The Strand, it's breaking down." She looked down to see cracks forming in the artifact's surface, energy bleeding out in dangerous pulses. Kay knew she had pushed it to its limit. With a final burst of effort, she reached out across the galaxy one last time. In hidden temples and forgotten ruins, she activated ancient security systems, sealing away dangerous artifacts and knowledge that could upset the balance she'd worked so hard to create. As the last of the Strand's power faded, Kay collapsed to her knees. The command center erupted into chaos once more, but this time it was the panicked scrambling of defeated foes rather than a pitched battle. Jalen and Bosk were at her side in an instant, supporting her as she struggled to stand. "Did it work?" Kay asked, her voice hoarse. Davin, monitoring communications channels, nodded in amazement. "Reports are coming in from across the galaxy. The syndicates are falling, Kay. You did it." But their victory was short-lived. The station shuddered violently, alarms blaring. "The Strand's energy release destabilized the core." The ghost's hologram flickered urgently. "This whole place is about to blow." Kay looked around at the scene of defeat and transformation she had created. "Well then," she managed a weak grin, "I'd say that's our cue to leave." As they raced for their ship, Kay clutched the now dormant strand to her chest. She had changed the galaxy, perhaps for the better, but the real work was just beginning. The age of syndicates was over. But a Starforge station collapsed behind them and their ship leapt into hyperspace. Vess knew that her greatest challenge still lay ahead, helping to build a better future for the galaxy she had just turned upside down. Chapter 23. The Price of Freedom. The Corellian freighter drifted in the shadow of a gas giant, its systems powered down to avoid detection. In the ship's dimly lit common area, Vess sat surrounded by holographic displays, each showing a different sector of the galaxy in turmoil. Reports from the corporate sector indicate widespread revolts against the authority. Jalen's calm voice cut through the cacophony of news feeds. Former slaves and oppressed workers are overthrowing their masters, but the power vacuum is leading to chaos in some systems. Kay nodded grimly, her eyes never leaving the displays. And the outer rim, Bosk, cleaning his blaster rifle in the corner, grunted. Hut space is in flames. Seems your little rewrite didn't just take down the top slugs, it gave every enslaved being the means and motivation to fight back. It's a war zone out there. Good, Kay muttered, though her furrowed brow betrayed her concern. She had wanted justice, not more bloodshed. Davin placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. You did what you had to do, little shadow. The galaxy needed a shake-up, and you provided it. But now comes the hard part, dealing with the aftermath. Kay sighed, finally tearing her gaze away from the reports of upheaval and revolution. I never wanted this kind of power, Davin. I'm a thief, not a galactic reformer. And yet, the ghost's hologram flickered to life.
That's exactly what you've become.
The underworld as we knew it is gone, Kay. You've rewritten the rules of the game. Kay's hand went to the pouch at her side, where the now dormant origin strand rested. Its power was spent, but she could still feel a faint resonance, a connection to the changes she had wrought across time and space. We're getting more messages, Jalen said, their voice tinged with a mix of awe and concern. From all over the galaxy. Former criminals, slaves, oppressed populations, they're calling you a liberator, Kay, a hero. Kay stood abruptly, pacing the small confines of the ship. I'm no hero, she said sharply. I did what I thought was right, but look at the costs. Entire sectors are in chaos. We've toppled the old order, but what's going to replace it? The ship fell silent, each member of the unlikely crew lost in thought. It was Bosk who finally broke the tension, his gravelly voice uncharacteristically soft. You know, the Trandoshan said, setting aside his cleaned weapon, back on Trandosha, there's an old saying. The hunter who brings down the alpha must be prepared to lead the pack. Kay turned to him, an eyebrow raised. Are you saying I should? What? Become the new crime lord of the galaxy? Bosk shrugged his scaled shoulders. I'm saying you broke it, you bought it. These people out there, the ones calling you a hero, they're looking for leadership. And like it or not, you're the one who gave them their freedom. He's right, Davin added, stroking his beard thoughtfully. The power structures of the galaxy have been upended. If someone doesn't step in to guide things, we could be looking at decades of war and chaos. Kay slumped back into her seat, the weight of responsibility pressing down on her. So what am I supposed to do? Set up some kind of Galactic Thieves Guild, a union for former criminals and revolutionaries. The moment the words left her mouth, Kay saw the others exchange meaningful glances. She groaned, realizing she had inadvertently stumbled onto a solution. Oh, no, you can't be serious. Think about it, Jalen said, excitement creeping into their normally stoic voice. A network of former outlaws using their skills to help maintain the new balance you've created. We could guide the transition, help prevent power vacuums from being filled by even worse elements. The ghost's hologram nodded enthusiastically. I could set up secure communication channels, create a decentralized system that couldn't be easily corrupted or taken over. And I, Bosk added with a toothy grin, know just about every bolt hole and hideout the old syndicates used. We could repurpose them, turn them into safe havens for those still fighting for their freedom. Kay looked around at her companions, a mix of emotions swirling within her. Part of her wanted nothing more than to run, to find some quiet corner of the galaxy and disappear. But a larger part, the part that had driven her to use the strand in the first place, knew that her work wasn't finished. "All right," she said finally, a hint of her old roguish smile returning, "but if we're going to do this, we do it right. No more shadows, no more hidden agendas. We'll be something new, protectors of the freedom we've given the galaxy." As the others began to excitedly plan and discuss logistics, Kay stepped away, moving to the ship's viewport. She stared out at the swirling clouds of the gas giant, her mind racing with the implications of what they were about to undertake. She thought of her parents, of the legacy they had passed down to her along with the strand. They had been guardians of balance in their own way, and now Kay would continue that work on a scale they could never have imagined. The origin strand had reshaped reality, but it was up to Kay and her unlikely band of reformers to ensure that the new reality was one worth living in. As the ship's engines hummed to life, preparing to take them back into the fray, Kay Vess, former thief, reluctant hero, and now guardian of a galaxy in transition, allowed herself a moment of quiet resolve. The price of freedom was high, but she was ready to pay it. The real work was just beginning. Chapter 24. New Horizons. The twin suns of Tatooine dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. Kay Vess stood atop a mesa, watching as a diverse group of beings worked to transform an abandoned moisture farm into something new. "You know," Davin said, joining her at the edge of the cliff, "when you said you wanted to set up our first base, I didn't expect you to choose here of all places." Kay smiled, a hint of sadness in her eyes. It felt right. This is where it all began, in a way. My parents' research, the origin strand, and now a new beginning. Below them, the farm was a hive of activity. Former slaves worked alongside reformed criminals, pooling their skills to create a haven. Bosk directed a team installing defense systems, while Jalen led a group in meditation, teaching techniques to help heal the mental scars of their past lives. "Speaking of new beginnings," Davin said, handing Kay a datapad, "we've got more responses to our call." Kay scrolled through the list, her eyes widening. "This is more than I expected." The datapad showed messages from across the galaxy. Former syndicate enforcers offering intelligence, slicers volunteering their skills, even a few disillusioned Imperial officers seeking redemption. "Seems like your little revolution struck a chord," Davin chuckled. "People are tired of the old ways. They want a chance to make things right." Kay nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders once more. "And it's up to us to give them that chance." As if on cue, her comlink chirped. The ghost's voice came through, excited and slightly frantic. "Kay, you're going to want to see this. We just intercepted a transmission from the core worlds." Kay and Davin made their way to the command center, a repurposed moisture vaporator housing state-of-the-art communication equipment. Inside, the ghost's hologram flickered beside a larger projection showing a chaotic scene on Coruscant. "Unprecedented upheaval," a news anchor was saying, her voice barely audible over the sounds of cheering crowds. "Following the mysterious collapse of several major criminal organizations, citizens have taken to the streets demanding reform. The Senate is in emergency session, voting on sweeping anti-corruption measures." Kay watched in amazement as the holofeed showed similar scenes playing out on worlds across the galaxy. "It's really happening," she breathed. "The changes we made, they're sticking." Bosk, who had joined them in the command center, grunted in approval. "Looks like your gamble paid off, Vess, but don't start celebrating yet. There's still plenty of scum out there who'll try to fill the power vacuum." "Which is why we need to move fast," Jalen added, entering with a group of newly trained recruits. "We've got reports of holdout syndicate forces regrouping in the Outer Rim. They're preying on worlds still in chaos from the upheaval." Kay's expression hardened with resolve. "Then that's where we start. Ghost, prep the ship." Bosk, I want you to reach out to your old bounty hunter contacts, any who might be willing to work for a cause instead of credits." As the others moved to carry out her orders, Davin placed a hand on Kay's shoulder. "You've come a long way from that little thief I took in all those years ago. Your parents would be proud." Kay felt a lump form in her throat. "I hope so. I just wish." She trailed off, her hand going to the pouch where the now dormant origin strand rested. Davin nodded in understanding. "You wish you could have saved them, changed their fate along with everything else." "Yeah," Kay admitted softly. "But I guess some things have to remain in the past. Their sacrifice, it led us here. Led me here." A comfortable silence fell between them as they watched the bustle of activity around the base. After a moment, Kay straightened, her old roguish grin returning. "Well, no use dwelling on what might have been. We've got a galaxy to keep in line, old man. You up for one last adventure?" Davin laughed, the sound warm and full of affection. "Last adventure? Oh no, my little shadow. I think we're just getting started." As they made their way to the ship, Kay felt a sense of purpose and belonging she'd never experienced before. She thought of all the twists and turns that had led her to this moment, from lone thief to reluctant hero, and now to leader of a movement that spanned the stars. The Origin Strand's power was spent, but its legacy lived on in the changes rippling across the galaxy. And in Kay herself, forever connected to the flow of time and possibility. As the ship's engines roared to life, lifting them off the sands of Tatooine, Kay Vess looked out at the star-filled expanse before them. The galaxy was vast, filled with dangers and wonders in equal measure, but for the first time in her life, Kay wasn't running from something. She was running towards it. "All right, team," she said, settling into the pilot's seat with a grin. "Let's go make some trouble for all the right reasons this time." The ship shot forward, leaving Tatooine's twin suns behind as it leapt into hyperspace. Kay Vess and her band of reformed outlaws rocketed towards their next adventure, ready to face whatever challenges the newly reshaped galaxy might throw at them. The future was unwritten, full of possibility, and Kay couldn't wait to see what came next. The end.